6:30. Call the meeting of the planning board and the task force to order. Remind you this meeting is being recorded. Call to order Laura Tenney here. Gordon Brewster.
Here.
Oh, Peter Morton.
Here.
Sue Philbrick here. Chris Olney.
Here.
Mary Foley. Here.
Hi.
So, the task force to order as well. Let's see, really. Sue Goldberg.
Here.
Jenny Hall.
Here.
Sarah Melish.
Here.
Carr.
Here.
Oh, and Richard Smith.
Here.
And Chris Olney here. I know Ann Harrison has got a cold and will not be here.
Sandy.
And Sandy should be here. I'm sure.
Mike Pratt.
And Mike Pratt. But we have a quorum, so we can.
Okay, want to do
Just
minutes
started.
first while we're waiting for.
Sure. So was everyone from the task force read the minutes from the last meeting? So take a motion to approve them.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, well, we can start.
You want to do planning board minutes too, or?
Why don't we just jump in on the purpose of today's meeting and Mark,
Guess we
that's
can
your.
start. Mark, yeah, we're waiting for Mark Resnick to show up because he's going to be the MC of this event, but I guess we can sort of talk about what we're going to be doing tonight, which is we've all gotten copies of the draft zoning language. We've all commented on them and we've all submitted those to Mark. He has compiled all of the comments, fixed all the typos, made some policy changes that he felt were totally reasonable, but he could explain them. And ones that he felt were inappropriate, he did not accept, but he's going to explain that as well.
Yeah, because one of them that he didn't include, we had discussed at the last meeting, included.
So that is definitely something we should.
Yeah.
Make.
That was the height restriction on the accessory structure,
Oh, okay.
because based on what's there, you would have no height restriction if you go to 20 stories on an accessory structure. I don't think that's our intent.
Yeah.
So the way I think Mark intends to do this. He'd like to focus on the
Yes.
general policy questions first. And yeah, I think he tends to go through section by section and discuss various suggestions for policy changes. Then after that, we can go through typos we'd like to see corrected, formatting. Oh. Sure. So let's go on to picking the things out of the agenda. Acknowledge receipt of correspondence. We're a couple of emails from Lorraine Giovanni. I'm not aware of any others. Guess we could even go for some public comment at this stage. Anybody for Mark? Does anyone from the public have anything they'd like to speak to while we're waiting?
See Sarah Pierce.
Sarah?
Hi, yes, I guess I'll be the one in the public asking a question. I did want to know, Sarah Pierce, 9 Friend Street, are we going to be able to ask questions after these topics are discussed? Because I'm not quite sure what will come out of the meeting at this point.
Yes, yeah, sure. After we go through each section, we'll ask for comments from the, but we'll see how it goes. If it isn't too controversial, you may just wait till the end.
Okay, that would be great. It's just hard to ask before you hear what's discussed, but that would be great. Thank you.
There'll be another public comment session.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe we can just kind of take a couple of the first second.
Okay, we can, yeah, we can do that. We can wing it as best we can.
Yeah. You may have some.
Do you want to do the minutes?
We've done this.
We've done it.
You know, you're a minute late.
Ah,
This is inefficient, ruthlessly efficient.
So Gordon and, Peter, you have the latest version because you don't have your.
Latest version of,
the zoning.
is it the one on the site or no?
No, I don't think
Latest
so.
version of.
There was
of
a
the
link
zoning-
sent to it by,
Rewrite, yeah, the
Mark.
rewrite.
The one that
Mark
Mark
said-
Resnick sent to you.
On Monday.
Sent it, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
we don't.
Yeah, you might not have it up. We'll have to get your.
it was,
Let me pull it up on the screen. Hold on.
the old, yeah, it's old.
Mark's revised.
We've been trying to get them your emails up and running.
Oh, that's why.
I think I have 40. And in the process, I ended up getting all of Christine St. Pierre's emails, of which she was subscribed to a lot of things.
uh-oh.
Anyway. Oh, it's Monday.
It's not up on the,
I'm just trying to find it in my.
Mark
that
sent it.
Number of emails, yeah,
um,
on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
and then Emily sent a response saying she was sending a memorandum, but I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't seen that either.
It was coming that afternoon.
That work. How'd that work out for you?
I'm glad that nobody else saw it either,
No,
because
no,
sometimes I
you're
miss
not,
them.
you're not alone on this one, nothing came through. At least not, certainly not that I saw. I think Gail's very good about sending that stuff out. If she gets it, well, there you go.
Ended up meeting.
Precondition.
But I figured Emily would send it to everyone, because she gets green.
She does.
Yeah,
She might have,
she
I mean,
responded.
you never know what happens in somebody's day.
Oh, you.
There it is, Justin, big guy.
Mark.
Playing over a hot.
Yeah. Take one and pass it on, take one and pass it
Well, you
on.
don't want a computer all the time.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And I'll be right back. I have to grab something else.
Was Mary Costello was on.
I think there's a second file.
Yeah, there's a second file, which is what he said. I think that's you and, that one.
Yes.
Oh, so what's making
What
the
he sent by
round
email.
is
Oh,
what
that's
making
you.
the round what,
I have no clue.
That's you on the
What's her name?
screen.
I don't know what the source thing is, but it looks
It's
like
Mark.
there's a second copy of what, this is a hard copy of what he said. I think you don't have this.
So.
It came by email.
Oh, but I don't have a tree.
Yeah.
Mark sent by email on their Tuesday.
So this is like. Thank you.
Oh, did you?
Mark.
I think he kept one over there. There's
Okay.
one.
There is a spare copy there.
I'll just see what's the name thing.
No. There we go. Right. I keep saying leave meeting for law. I don't know. All right. I think that was the collective. Exactly.
So this is the explanation.
All right, there we go.
Now, the first document is Mark's explanation.
Right. and
I would
the second
adjust
is
The second are the
bylaw.
actual,
Bylaw.
actual.
Yeah,
It's what he's-
changes track.
It's what he sent us on Monday, correct?
I don't.
Yes. Well, we should ask, because I don't need an extra.
Yeah, it's dated 6/3/24 on the tours here.
Thank you.
I think
I've got what he said. Yeah.
No, but I think I gotta add.
Send some forms. Ah, yeah, it looks like the same. Great.
Comments are very.
Yep.
Pick up your change.
Ah,
But
If you take up a change in height. Emission.
For those of you who are tuning in, we're just looking at waiting for Mark to come back and having reviewing a quick memo that he's just provided us. Sure, we'll be going through it, but
yeah, okay, raise the assurance 24%. We don't want to.
my son's fine.
Yeah.
Sarah, one thing that this writing is good, but it doesn't correlate directly to these images. Will these images be part of anything in sense?
the images will be on a map.
Okay, so the verbiage that describes particularly the Beach Street to C Street district needs to correlate to the verbiage in the zoning bylaw. Right now, it doesn't.
Are you, so you're saying just the name of the district, or is it?
Well, right now, it's called the Beach Street to C Street district, and then you got Beach Street sub-district, C Street sub-district, Summer Street. So just making the words the
Is-
same on the graphic, not on this.
Gordon, is that in the FAQ or on the? I
that's
see.
old.
Yeah, that's old. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, but see, I think Mark went to get maps,
Okay,
so presumably.
it's a suggestion for clarity, so you.
Oh, it's
Yes.
important
Yeah,
to
Words
get
that
it
are-
clear.
We've been changing the names all along, so it leads to confusion.
Yeah.
There
Well-
was sub-district 1,
You may-
sub-district 1B.
I might do that.
Well,
I don't know.
I think people want to know where they were.
Right. So I think the names are currently the general area rather than actually trying to describe all of the boundaries of the district.
Okay, so
So,
this may have already been changed then.
Yeah, it has actually.
yeah.
Then, so it'll align with this.
Yeah.
Right,
Hopefully.
so let's keep. Okay, so, first one to start with.
Okay, we'll start with purpose because that's pretty.
Alright.
Oh, if we start and he showed up.
You and I take.
Mark, the version that you sent around of the bylaw is what was available to us on Monday, is that right?
was.
Yes.
Anyone else need another copy?
Mr. Bateson.
It's not really for tonight's discussion, but
I'm actually,
Uh,
these little skinny guys.
Just a little.
start freezing to death.
I was shaking when I saw
I was
it.
full.
Well, we can adjust
What's that?
just in case.
I thought it was just a
People
way to keep
can't.
people awake.
Well, it could be,
At least
you know,
Garmin.
Gar takes a nap every so
We have
often,
to
so
keep-
maybe it's forgotten.
What? Don't wake me up.
Nice.
Don't wake me up.
Okay, Gail. Hold your hand up.
I need to lower that, sorry.
Okay. All right, it's just a test, right?
Oh, yeah, I've gotten things like this before. Some new contraption.
All right, Mark, you ready?
yes, I am.
Okay.
So I have the latest version of that you sent on Monday or Tuesday.
That's what I passed around. And
Okay,
I
great.
did not make any additional changes. Remember, this is to be sent to the state for reviews or any other little tweaks or formatting, spelling, we can. 3 months to do that.
3 months.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, town meeting, this is not what, we can make typos and small changes. The purpose of this is to, yeah, just to get something ready to go agency, to see if it complies with the state's requests.
that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, so you want to walk us through, I guess, your memo that says what you.
Okay.
Now, I explained we're gonna be talking about policy issues first and then the things that people didn't think were.
Right, so I did not go through and write down responses to little edits that people may have suggested.
It's fine.
They're either in there and you sent your comments, so you know whether they got changed or not. I didn't change everybody's comments. I kind of focused on the bigger issues that could be language issues that might affect the validity of something or how it gets interpreted or what it means. So that's kind of what I focused on in reviewing this. And then, so based on a couple of comments related to the purpose, I changed the end of the sentence so that it reads, so that the purpose of the housing overlay district is to allow multifamily housing as of right in accordance with section 3A of the Mass General laws. And preserve the character of the town, minimize the impact of the community, and add options for multifamily dwellings. So,
Does anybody have any problem with any of that?
Are these edits likely, or who knows, but is the state inclined to interpret some of our editorial, words in an adverse fashion to say we're trying to skirt the law or in any way? I mean, I want to make sure that we got the best chance of getting an okay on this.
I don't believe so. So if you say we're trying to minimize the impact of community, I think that's like an obvious statement that might be in a bunch of other ones.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's, I think it's
Exactly.
pretty clear that towns and cities are doing what we're doing,
Okay.
overlaying existing dense areas. So.
Thank you.
You'll just pass another law.
And then we'll all get together.
Okay, so we're done with 9.4.1.
9.4.2, I wrote in this section, there were a couple of comments with questions if special permits can still be allowed in the CHOD. So special permits can be allowed as long as they don't relate to the multifamily use, but are allowed for accessory uses, which is what we're referring to, such as like health facilities or parking structures. Or other types of commercial uses or home occupations. So that doesn't mean that you can't build the housing, it just means these other uses, which the state doesn't really care about, you can regulate differently.
Great.
The definitions, so there was
Oh, can I ask a question? So in the sample state bylaw, they recommend, it's recommend is the word, to define the purpose of sub-districts, like why we're having certain sub-districts. Do you feel like that's not important?
Again, Emily helped draft this as well, and so since she is much more attuned to how the state reviewers are going to be looking at this, that if she didn't include it, I don't think we need to say this sub-district, the purpose is, because there's already some high density housing and continuing that development patterns in keeping with the character. So I
We
don't
need
think,
to define the purpose of the districts in that case too.
I don't think, I mean, you never really see it in any other zoning unless you're creating like some sort of special district. You know,
Well, that's why-
purpose-
Better.
Well, we have a purpose district for the entire bylaw. The entire bylaw relates to multifamily housing, so having other purposes for each of the little sub-districts. I mean, you can just basically say the same thing, it's kind of redundant, so.
It allows you to do it, so.
So that's why I thought it was interesting that they specifically said that, but, and then just to clarify for map, this is, references a CHOD boundary map. Are we updating our zoning map
So,
as we do for overlay districts?
so we will adopt the maps that I passed out. They'll be cleaned up a little bit, but there'll be an official submittal of these maps. And these maps will define the district. They won't be overlaid in the GIS system. There'll probably be a separate layer that'll be added, but on that map, you just can't. It'll be too busy. So there'll be many zoning bylaws have little pullouts. Like you see, if you look at the state of Massachusetts down this section on the side of Boston and Worcester, showing a little more detail. So we'll have the same thing.
I suspect Mary's question is there's this process that we have to follow when we adopt a new map.
Well, there is, and
So
I,
we have to make sure.
But that's
we
part of
know
this
that.
bylaw.
That's-
Just adopting these new maps.
Yes, those maps are part of the bylaw.
Right.
That's it.
I just have, and the question is prompted only because other towns do have the overlay in their GIS and they've adopted it as an overlay, so I'm just curious why we wouldn't, but that's fine.
It is an overlay. I mean, that's how
And
it is being.
Greg told me that the assessor system can take an overlay district,
Yes,
so it will have to be coded in as fast.
okay, so we are doing it, okay.
I
Okay.
have a question.
ZBA is gonna require it, I'll clue you.
Richard, yes.
I have a question, which just may be my limitation, but I've always been concerned about making it perfectly clear that what you can do in the chart is applicable only to 3 families and or more, and you cannot in any way use any of the terms of the overlay for anything other than a multifamily. And I know it says in 9.4.1 that purpose is for, but where does it, is it explicit in here that a person who wants to make a change to a building that is not a 3-family cannot do anything other than the underlying regulations and not the chart?
Emily was supposed to be confirming that in the overlay district, somebody could not apply for a special permit or variance.
That's not really what I'm asking.
Well, that's why you would do something different. You'd need a special permit or a variance.
Yes, but my question is a little different, I think. The
Your
question is,
question-
where in this language does it explicitly state that a 3-family, excuse me, other than 3 families, only the underlying zoning?
So if you had a house in the underlying zoning that you wanted to make a 2-family, but you would be doing that under the rules of the underlying zoning district that would allow a 2-family.
So it seems to me that number 2, underlying zoning district is an attempt to do that.
Yeah.
And the question is, does it do it?
Richard, I thought it's not super clear there either. That's how they have it in the sample zoning. I don't think it's super clear, but I think it's kind of clear.
Yeah, it does say uses that are not identified in section 9.4.
Are governed by the
So
requirements of
what
the
does that mean
underlying.
exactly? This is section 9.4.
Yes, but it says that what things that are not identified in 9.4, i.e. not multifamily, are governed by the requirements of the underlying zoning district.
Permitted
So it's
uses, which would be
pretty-
9.4.4 probably.
So it's pretty clear.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe that's.
I think Sarah's right. It should be 9.4.4.
I'm marking one up with comments.
So the next one, definitions, so in Definitions, I did make some edits to the definitions. There were some additional comments about those. But the ones that were clearly already in the definitions, the same way, or things that, a couple that were applicable, not really necessary, I did remove. So,
Then you added some modifications to section 2, which is the definitions of some in zoning. Back at the back, right?
yes, just to,
Yeah.
I believe.
So I have a concern on the definitions. Because I think there's, well, it's at least 6 that we already have defined in our zoning bylaws, and this is a different definition than what we currently have. Which I had noted, and so I think we have to be consistent, and I think if we already have it in our zoning bylaw, we don't need it duplicated here. And then with affordable unit, that's not taking the full definition from 3A. I think it's missing a sentence or 2, so I wasn't clear why we didn't do that.
I left the affordable unit alone because that's how it was submitted by Emily. So,
Looks fine to me.
and I didn't have any sort of issue with it. And then what's the other one? You said 6? I crossed off.
So,
I crossed off.
so affordable housing is already defined in our zoning bylaw. Multifamily housing is defined in our bylaw and differently. Multifamily zoning district is already defined and differently.
Mhm.
Residential dwelling unit, we already defined, but differently. Well, maybe
These are
what,
the definitions of this section, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that challenge of the fact that there is potentially, we might want a different definition. A residential dwelling unit, for example, in this section and in the other, so perhaps we could consider changing it to CHOD residential dwelling district. And put the CHOD in
That's a
front
good
of
idea.
each of
Yeah.
these. And then it's clear, in section 4 that we're talking about the CHOD residential. If there is a substantive difference.
So my feeling was for some of these other things that are slightly different, which is what I didn't do, is
Mhm.
that for the purposes of submitting this to EOHLC, they're not gonna care that there's really a slight difference here. That, and that these definitions would have to sit down with Emily in the 2 different versions and see if she, and I can hammer out some sort of agreement on the language, whether we can use what's in the current zoning or whether we should change it. So,
How material are the differences? And I think if you can.
for the most part, I don't think.
well, the
I think Mary's point's well
multifamily-
taken, if you can make it consistent. Without,
Yeah.
without
Mhm.
changing the impact, why wouldn't we want to do that? I mean,
Thank you, and I mean, I don't know why.
Yeah, it is.
Why residential dwelling unit would be different
Right.
in this overlay as opposed to.
This may have more words in it. It's the same. This is the definition we use in CBAs.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
not
how
saying the
this is
definitions are
explained.
wrong, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, you know, we should have.
It may have, I'll look it up. It's online. You know, you gotta get with the program sometimes, Danny.
I'm a troglodyte, happily to be one. What material are the changes,
Oh, for which ones?
just as an example.
How about multifamily housing?
Multifamily is different. And we have to use the definition that's required by the statute, so that's our
There
other,
might be reasons to not use it that
So
way in
we-
the underlying zone.
exactly.
So we, in our current zoning, make it clear, which it is the state definition, that multifamilies is connected to the other units with fire separation assemblies such as walls or floors. So we had to make it clear that you share a firewall for it to be multifamily, and that's not included in this proposed bylaw.
I don't,
Is that important?
no, I don't think it's important. I think that's overkill myself.
Honestly, I had a reaction to the definitions and in general to the whole set of bylaws, which was, it was fairly readable and clear. And part of what we're trying to do is help people understand
Right.
things that have been too complicated for
Our
you.
existing zoning leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, right.
So can you basically craft, say, for the purposes of,
Well,
It does say
what it
that.
says right at the top.
It says for
says-
purposes of this section.
9.4.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
But I
So-
do like Sarah Creighton's idea of putting,
Job,
Job,
multifamily job.
because there's just no harm in being clearer than you need to be.
That it's a different definition.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's redundant personally. I think the purposes of section 9.4 says it, and the more we glom it up with extra words, that the more
Confusing it gets.
confused between, well, am I supposed to compare this to something else? I think this article cleaner. So the other alternative is to move these definitions into section 2.
I don't
I
think
think
we
they're
want to do
right
that.
here, they make
Yeah.
it simple and legible to read.
Unless-
Yeah,
unless
says at the
you-
top, it's the
yeah.
purpose of 9.4.
You try to change the base zoning and you're never gonna
No,
get
no.
anything approved.
I addressed the ones that were obviously unnecessary or were already virtually the exact same language. So these other ones, I tried to again simplify this, but still keep this here, so.
Okay,
So under
I think you
permitted,
need to share these up bylaws, so right here.
Always generous in your rules. Did someone say we wanted to move underlying zoning and districts to the definition section?
no, not these, not
Okay.
these. So under permitted uses as of right, or a couple of editing things, but basically there was a comment about allowing commercial uses on the first floor of a multifamily building. However, that being what's considered a mixed-use building. But we don't call it that. We don't say you have to do that. We just say we're not. You can do it if you choose, and so, but you can only do it on the first floor, is what we say, and.
But it was a great way to finesse mixed use, to get it in there and not get in trouble with the state.
I have a comment on that. So the state definition of mixed use is different than our current bylaw. So the state definition says, I won't read the whole thing, but it says including without limitation, commercial, institutional, industrial, or other uses. So we specify in our use table what we allow in the G district for commercial. So with this one saying without limitation, that means whatever somebody wants in the general district as a mixed use would be allowed.
If you interpreted, you're saying if you interpreted it as the state's definition rather than our definition?
We're not
Well,
calling
our
it a
definition
mixed-
is use table.
We're not calling it a mixed use building.
Right.
We're just saying on the first floor, you can build commercial as long as it complies with our
Uses allowed in District G.
use of what's allowed in District G. So
That's the main
what we
thing.
can't do is we can't say you have to have commercial on the
Right.
first floor. If someone just wants to build a multi-unit building.
So you can't have marijuana because that's not allowed in District G.
And we're not referencing the state's, mixed use.
Right.
We
definition,
don't want to
right?
reference the
No.
state's mixed use
Right.
definition.
Non-residential.
Right.
any other comments on this?
Where are we? I'm sorry.
9.2,
Yeah.
9.4.
No, yeah, point number 2.
So
Accessory
Yep.
uses.
accessory uses. So accessory uses, to be allowed, and if they're allowed in our accessory use section, but they call customary home occupation, which is a home business. So in the Beaver Dam district, it says specifically that it must be allowed by special permit from the zoning board. And the reason being is you might have a 20-unit building, right? And so you're living in a big multi-unit building of 20 or 25 units. There are some allowed uses in there that might be not the best to have in there that you allow by special permit, at least as a review and the butters can comment. So that was added, and then the other change is there was concern about pools and fitness centers and other types of things. So we moved that to be again a special permit, and it should say from the zoning board of appeals.
And as Carr would say, that's in response to public comment that we received from the forum.
Yes, it was.
We respond to public comment. We feel an obligation and duty to do that.
Now go ahead.
On accessory uses, so I proposed taking out parking garages by right in residential. I think that merits a discussion that, I guess I'd like a better understanding of what's being looked at or considered or proposed for Newport Park. Which I'm assuming this is referencing, so it's saying 73 units at Newport Park is in the model, and 4 stories would be allowed, so that's a 4-story parking garage. I'm assuming abutting powder house, so in the back, so I'm having a hard time saying that makes sense to allow a parking garage in a residential district, right?
So later in this bylaw, I have changed the definition of structured parking to basically mean a multi-level parking garage. And then under the parking section, I have required that to be a special permit in the powder house and Newport Park District and Beaver Dam.
So that responds directly to Mary's concern.
But what you haven't done is restricted the height on accessory structures. So as this bylaw is written, you could build a 20-story high accessory structure. And in our current bylaw, we limit it to 1.5 stories and 25 feet. I really think we need that in this bylaw.
I agree.
So I guess I'm still not clear on the parking though. It says parking garage as an accessory use.
It would be a single family house, you have a parking garage. It's indoor parking.
Right, or one car under,
Now, many multifamily projects have a concrete podium type construction where parking is underneath and the apartments are above, and it's a very effective, cost effective, and it's very popular with tenants
So
because
covered parking.
it's covered parking. In the snow, they go down, get in their car and drive away.
Well, it's
So-
also just a townhome. You have
Sure,
a garage right in the front. You just drive in.
So would that be the first floor and then you have
correct.
1.5 stories
Absolutely,
above?
yes.
Basically,
Okay.
it's built on, residential is built on a podium with the
Okay.
parking underneath.
Okay. All right, so then so it separated the garage from the structure, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But to Sarah's point, she's looking for some
yeah,
dimension.
I'm trying to.
Accessory structures height should go in the section on that starts on line 121, because we talk about setbacks and so on. So we can talk about that
Yeah.
there, I think.
I'm also
It does.
concerned with this table under height. It says stories 2.5 feet 35. It has to be the lesser of the two.
Yes, and it has to
Right.
say max.
Right.
Yes.
Are we skipping to there now?
Well, wait, let's.
I'm
keep
sorry.
Proceeding ahead.
Okay.
Dimensional
So,
standards.
So I asked, I just want to go back to accessory structures, accessory uses. Maybe it's accessory structures, so let me hold that till we get there.
Are we still on the table?
Where are we?
Well, no,
Here.
so I'm still, okay, so accessory uses and accessory structures
Are different.
are different.
Yep.
Okay, so an accessory use is I want to have my law office in my house.
Right.
And an accessory structure is
Is a
I want
separate
to get a
building.
garden shed.
Is a separate building,
Okay.
separate structure. Yep.
Okay, so I want to talk about accessory structures
Mhm.
when we get there.
Are we done with accessory uses?
Well, accessory structures is under accessory uses.
Well, structures is under the table.
Right.
Dimensional
Before it
table.
says accessory use.
Like what happens in the building.
Indeed. No, I know, but it's uses and then structure.
No, it's in the table under
It's,
number
it's
4.
underneath in the table.
No, I'm just
No,
saying
but,
here, it says
she's got a
accessory
point.
uses, and then we do
it's
accessory
D.
structure.
2D.
Right, line 89.
Right,
It says
89.
that accessory structures on the same lot and customarily incidental to residential use, and that's in our current bylaw.
So how is accessory?
And that
structure
should be moved to number 4 under the table, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Definition of accessory structure, because we don't define it here.
It's in the zoning.
It's defined.
A garden shed or a garage or a.
It's
Second
It's
house.
a second-
Has a kitchen.
Very specific, very,
No, it's not. It's
because
not. It's,
right, yeah,
it
it's,
doesn't allow a residence in it.
about an office.
yes.
Yes.
So
It can have
my,
everything except a cooking pot. And if you have a 5,000 square foot house, your accessory structure could be 4,990.
So our current definition of accessory is a building, structure, or use which is subordinate to, and the use of which is customarily incidental to, and is located on the same lot with the principal building, structure, or use to which it is accessory. That's our current definition.
and we worked on
Sounds-
that.
Guys.
I'm not changing it. In this go around.
The question is, what can your imagination make of an accessory structure in the context of a multifamily unit? And what other things could this be?
It just could be a tool shed.
It's controlled by, what you can do in the accessory structure is controlled by the accessory uses that are allowed.
So could it be a community center?
Yes.
Could
No,
it
I don't
be-
think that's an allowable use.
Okay, could it be an amenity, public, congregation,
Church.
no,
You mean like a community building?
yeah, community building.
Daycares
It
are allowed.
has to
everywhere.
be accessory to the
Right,
residential.
so if the residential is a family residential unit, could there be a childcare center there?
The childcare uses are in
Yes,
the
there
table
are.
under the zone.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good.
My,
Yeah.
my
Small ones you have to allow.
comment
anyway.
on this.
We're
is-
very
sorry,
vague on
I'm-
accessory.
Is, do we need to allow garden sheds at the smallest, an 8x8 garden shed by right, or in the multi-family district, or should it be part of the site plan review from the get-go? Because
We allow it today. I mean, I don't see why you want to.
I can make a suggestion where you might not want to. If I've got an apartment complex, I might want to put up maintenance sheds, storage sheds, all kinds of things.
Right,
For which we have not accounted for.
Right.
We might want to allow it.
And you don't need a building permit for
If it's
under
a-
200 square feet. So
Correct.
a 3-unit or 4-unit building could have 4 garden sheds and for lawn mowing, you know.
Or,
Yeah.
carports.
I'm concerned that we're extending.
Yeah.
The definition may be adequate to our single and two-family
Right.
predominantly community
Right,
now, but
that's my concern.
we're changing it. This could be a very different
Right.
application and could significantly alter what the building looks like.
But if we limit it to the 1.5 stories and 25 feet height, you're limiting how big those accessory structures can
Limiting
be.
how tall they are,
Yeah.
not limiting how big they are.
Or how many?
Well,
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 And we've reduced the setback, so now they're right at somebody's,
no, it's the same
Potential.
setbacks we have today in the general district.
Yeah, that's what it says in 4.
So my
Um,
larger
same as
question is.
No change from
Is
current.
actually, because they're allowed in the underlying zoning, do we need to allow them by right in the CHOD?
district.
First of all, just whether you think it's good or bad. Do we need to, and that's a question I guess for Mars or Emily.
Not-
Well,
that was
I
my
don't-
point. I doubt that we have to do it at all. I mean, our obligation is to provide multi-family housing.
They said we could do special permits for accessory.
I just feel like they should be special permits, because I
don't
think if
agree.
you have I lived in a 7-unit apartment in Beverly, and everyone had, like, accessory space.
Yeah.
It took up a great deal of coverage.
But you're
and-
still limited by the coverage requirements and the setbacks,
know,
don't
I
forget.
know, But I think,
Well, that's another story.
Or that
because
it's-
the coverage requirements just says structures and parking. It doesn't say impervious.
or the design
Should say
standards includes the accessory structures as part of the package, and if it's
Should.
not done when the application is made, so I guess if the question is when there are modifications, maybe to any of these structures. One gets built in 2025, and then it gets modified in 2028 with accessory structures or with another dormer, or how does that? We haven't really addressed that.
Is this the kind of minutia we want to get into?
I don't think it's such minutia. Why would we want to give accessory units here in this case, when we don't have to? We're working on an overlay district for large apartment buildings. We're not working on general district or on underlying
Well,
zoning. Why would we want to
small
give?
lots.
Work on small lots, and it may not be apartment. buildings,
Majority of
may
it
be
is
a-
very small lots.
something going
Okay,
to a
but we're not
3-family.
talking about those. We're talking about the ones where they're going to build multi-family. Why would we
No,
give
we're
it away?
not. We're talking about this whole thing applies to
Why? What's
everything.
your argument for giving it away?
We have it today. We allow accessory
You
structures.
still have it today, as we have it today. You're giving it away in a different
No, I don't agree
application.
with that,
For a
Richard.
different use. It's a different
Well,
use than.
there's a big difference between a 12-unit apartment building or a
The-
40-unit apartment
the
building and a 100.
Place that's gonna be is out at Beaver Dam.
No, they-
Well,
Acknowledge ourselves.
From
I would make sure-
one unit, house to a 4-unit
Yeah.
place,
Right.
you know.
That's a big, yes, there's a
big-
lot of,
Big
there's a
change
lot
there.
of projects
I
that
think,
in-
let's
in-
let them come back and ask for it.
All right, well, I think we should probably take a vote on this. How about that?
Okay,
How many people want to have accessory uses, structures only by special permit? And how many would want by right?
In the site plan review.
in the site plan
With site
review.
plan review.
Oh, that's good.
Well, it looks like the special permit wins for now.
So then I should change 89 to be a special permit.
You need to move 89 over to number 4 on the next, on the. You have a whole discussion of accessory structures, and it seems to me that
Well, I should.
89 should be merged with 121.
So we have accessory uses allowed by special permit, shouldn't it go under 3?
No, I'm talking about,
Yeah, but that's the dimensional stuff.
the 8990 should be merged into that line 121.
I think it should be just
I
under
agree with you, because it's
98.
not a use, it's a structure.
Yeah, you have it under uses, it's not a use, it's a structure, and it's too complicated to go between the two areas.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't understand what it is you're
I
asking.
think that's a administrative.
So on line 89, there's,
Dimensional standards.
no, on line 89.
Oh, my.
It says accessory structures on the same lot and customary incident to residential use such as storage shed, gazebo and similar, and
Right.
that's under accessory use. Well, a structure is not an accessory use. So that explanation should be merged into the 121, which talks about accessory structures.
I've made note of that.
yeah, I don't. I probably gave them that.
Okay.
I printed it out. I think.
So we get to the dimensional table.
Dimensional table.
You don't know where that's going.
It also helps us get it passed. That's that we're also trying to get this passed.
Right, right.
And so we've just taken away one more issue that the objection.
Okay, on the table, I believe everyone talked about maximum height, maximum lot coverage, maximum, minimum setbacks. I guess that should be clear.
So it should say height maximum, lot coverage maximum,
Yeah. Setbacks minimum.
setbacks minimum.
And the lesser of for height, as you pointed out. So.
May I ask a question of Mark and one particular word on here on the second line down, Mark, it says additional lot area per dwelling structure. What is the additional apply to?
So in the model, you have to set a number for a base number. So if you set it at 2,000 square feet and then units 2 and 3 each have to have 2,000 square feet, you need 6,000 square feet. If you set it at a base of 5,000 square feet and then the additional unit has 2,000 square feet, then you need 9,000 square feet in order to do a 3-unit building.
So
And that's because that's how the model works. They want you to set a base number, so some communities will set a certain minimum size as that.
Well, I'm just reading this saying when the word additional sounds like I'm adding, I got 6,000 square feet for a minimum lot. This is pure interpretation. Then I see the next line says additional lot area per dwelling unit.
I think there's a good point there because in the models, there is actually a base. There's two different
Yes.
parameters. One is base and one's addition. I never liked the fact that we made the base only 2, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
However, I agree that it's confusing to someone who does not see the language of the base unit. If you see something labeled as addition unit, I don't know what that would mean.
I
In our
don't think
case,
this
it's the
is,
same.
if I was a developer, if I was gonna be doing this, actually doing something here, this tells me I got 6,000 square feet of lot area, and if I added on one unit for an additional, I'd have to add another 2,000 foot to my lot area, meaning 8,000 square feet,
That's
or
right.
10,000. So is the word, is elimination of the word additional, would that be appropriate?
Or do you need another line for lot area for first unit?
Yeah, so maybe we need,
Just the
where
base.
where it says minimum lot area, that would be for,
Well, you can,
for a 3-family.
No,
well, could you just add the word, Gordon, would it clarify it? If it said additional lot area per additional dwelling unit?
No.
No.
So-
It just confounds, I see the word minimum. If I was approaching this from coming into town, looking to perhaps buying a house, this is a good size, okay, 6,000 square feet, great, I meet that. And now if I'm gonna put another living unit within that building, that means the lot size just increased to 8,000 square feet.
So maybe.
why don't we have a line for the
Instead of
base?
saying additional,
First unit.
and say,
Maybe that's what we do.
Yeah.
We go, instead of minimum lot area, because.
No, you need minimum lot area.
That's
To get into the game.
Yeah,
That's basically.
but then if you have
So-
lot area for first dwelling unit and then additional,
Yeah.
and then
Maybe not
lot
say
area
additional,
for
just
each
say-
additional unit.
required lot area for each building unit.
But I think they're different for the base and
The
for
base
the
is-
additional.
The base is
different
the 3 to 4,
In a
right?
couple places,
Yeah,
it's a little
not the
different.
same.
Well,
So,
we happened to choose a base number that was the same as the additional unit.
Not on every district.
Not everywhere.
Mark's changed it, so it's not the same across all
Slightly.
districts. So I think we need that.
So we need the line that corresponds to the model.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll like add a line for the base lot area, which will be probably 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,500 and
Don't say base lot area, say area for first unit.
Well, it's the
Is that the
first
existing
three.
unit or the first?
It's the first three.
It's the first
So
three or
the
four.
first-
No, it isn't.
It's the
No, well,
first
wait.
multifamily.
There's one for the first, one number for the first unit, and then there's different numbers for each additional unit
yes.
in some of the districts.
Okay, so that, can I, on the notes, can we say clarify that and, let the.
He's got
the
2,500 as a
language
base.
So if I've got a 6,000 square foot lot,
This is.
can
where
I
it's
build
different.
3 units on it?
Yes, but
Yes.
this is where it's different. This one that has the 6,500.
Okay, or 6,500 in
That
that case.
requires 2,500.
I can build 3 units. What if I
Right.
want to build 4?
Right,
You
then
can't.
you have to do it in two buildings.
How many more
You
square
have to
feet
build
of?
it in
2,000.
No, you can do it in one building, just have to add another, you have to have another 2,000 square feet.
Okay.
feet, right.
So in a way, you want to say minimum lot area for the first 3 units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way zoning works.
Oh, sorry.
You need to have a minimum lot area in order to qualify under this section of the code.
Okay.
Okay,
If you
so
have a
then you
five
need
thousand
another
square
line.
foot lot, you're not covered in this section of the
So
code.
it's
Yeah, we
minimum
just-
lot
we just
size
need
for
to add a
lot
line.
district.
We
Yeah,
need
it's
to
not
add a
allowed.
line that says first 3 units.
What does that
The
line gonna
first
say?
unit
Yeah.
and each additional
What
unit.
is that line gonna say?
No,
Yes,
It'll
First 3
say
units.
first 3
lot
units.
area.
the first unit is different,
First unit lot area.
is different in the zone.
However the lot-
2,500.
It's not as simple, it's not as simple as each,
And then
each
2,000
building
for each
unit,
addition.
Well,
you
we
have to
need
have
to
a
get this
minimum of
clarified.
2,000 square feet on.
I-
That's what's in the model.
Yeah, it's not quite, because it differs in the
It's not what we had
other
originally.
districts. Not all the
So you
same.
could only build a
Imagine.
single
Sorry.
family if you had 6,000
Model calls
square
it
feet.
base lot.
In this,
Is that
in
what
this
they call it?
district, you would go to underlying zoning.
So I think we need to
what
clarify
about
that
in
and let you get, let
the,
Mark,
uh,
We're getting a little,
yeah, let Mark figure out how
In
to
the
clarify
CHOD
that.
district, what about in the CHOD district?
You, in
Okay.
this here, you have to have 6,500 square feet.
For 1 unit or for 3?
3,
For 3,
anything to play the game.
To be,
Right.
to be covered under this section of the zoning.
To be applicable. Okay, so let's let Mark figure out how to
Okay.
clarify that. but,
You could say minimum lot area to be included in, to be considered a child.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So Mark, you're gonna
Well, this is gonna
redraft
be
it.
edited.
Don't screw it up.
Fix it.
That's the kind of executive.
Yeah.
Okay,
In number 2, you have a typo,
Can I ask a question about the,
a red multi.
can I just stay on
mullet.
on this for a second? Just ask a clarifying question about the heights. Why are and this is probably obvious to everybody but me, but why are the increments in stories different in one district from another? Is that an obvious question?
To qualify,
What?
to qualify under the model.
To
To
get
make
density.
more-
So it's a-
some of the districts more dense,
Okay,
but also, I think, maybe Mark, but also, the districts that allow a greater height have potential, they're sort of tucked away, the Newport part, for instance,
Right.
tucked away a little bit visually. And Beaver Dam is.
okay.
tucked away a
But it's
little.
actually a more complicated mathematical
Right.
problem, which is
It's
we have to get a minimum density across the board of 15 units. And some of the districts, we don't want that much density, so that's why we're doing it.
Thank you.
It was a good question.
It's a good
It's a question that someone like myself who hasn't really
Absolutely.
studied this
Yeah.
might ask.
Yeah.
But those are very good questions.
Yeah. In the Beaver Dam, the existing zoning is 55 feet.
So you brought that down.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
In response to public comment.
And listen to the public.
Can we, why isn't there a maximum dwelling units for Newport, Powder House and Allen to Lincoln?
Because, those right now are, have, large developments on there, so I can't, so for example, the Summer Street, that development across from the train station is 42. So I would have to cap it at 42. So
Between otherwise.
other lots could then develop 42 if they could make all the other numbers work.
So
So,
we couldn't,
so it kind of doesn't make sense.
no, I agree, but on the other hand, aren't they sort of grandfathered in a way or
No.
something? And if there was a new lot created, couldn't we say, well, the max there is?
I think the real issue is that we don't make a
No.
density requirement.
Yeah, we don't, that we lose the
That's
density.
the real issue.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I mean, we've
And I
cranked
think
up those
the
densities
feeling
pretty high.
is that those areas are not likely, you know, to be
Right.
redeveloped. Well,
Well,
you still have the limit based on the size of the lots.
That's right, which is a limit that's built into
Yeah.
it.
But
So-
leaving those squares blank, are they gonna say, oh, you made a mistake?
No.
You should have filled those? No? Okay.
So, and then I have two other comments. I would like to see, an open space requirement. I know we have it in the model, but then it's taken out. And I'm kind of wondering why. I mean, I know it's in the state sample bylaw and many towns that have submitted have an open space requirement, which I think is important. I've seen some buildings in various towns that it's just all building.
But we have that by default
by
with our
by
coverage
coverage.
percentage.
Backwards, we do it back. the
No, but
other way.
open
We
space
say-
is contiguous space. You know, if you have a patch of grass here and a patch of grass there and a patch of grass there, that's not really open space. So I would like to see that, and then with the lot
What language
coverage,
would you use, Mary?
I would just put a line in the table, open space requirement, and we come up with the percentage. Is it 20%?
Then you gotta
What
define it.
percentages would you use?
Um,
Give us what you, how you would like to see it.
Sure, I would like to see it at 20%.
So that, where would the line be?
It could be its own line, open space.
That's it.
One of my problems with the whole thing is that we are thinking, when we think about this, of some developer coming in and building huge structures. And in fact, primarily in the downtown district, because we've been careful about selecting small lots, and you are limited by the lot size, you've got homeowners who want to make their single family or two family be a three family. So 20%, I mean, come on. I mean, we're making very
You have
complicated
to-
requirements.
By default with
It's
the
gonna be.
coverage requirement, because you've
Right.
got 30, you can only go to 70%
Anyway,
coverage of structures, and we gotta change it from parking to impervious.
Well, so
So,
parking is how the model works.
But the zoning can say impervious.
Yeah, it has to be impervious
It's
because
gotta be.
this would imply that you can have structures and parking, and then you can add a patio and walkways, and
Yeah.
it has to be
It
impervious.
becomes parking and people get around that by putting pavers down or gravel
That's
down.
okay, isn't it?
Does it?
But this way, we
stay
have
that way
nothing.
for- Really stay
Well, let's
that
go
way.
to the point about open space. Let's take the most obvious place, which is Beaver Dam Road.
Correct.
If, we have the 5 acres and 20% would be an acre of that. And I think from my perspective, I like the idea of open space, but what that does is it forces a higher, it forces more likelihood of a
Right.
large scale
Right.
building as opposed to, which may be fine. But it limits the design options, which may be fine.
I think it's
but
worse than that,
I think,
because we've already achieved our density
Density
based
based on
upon what we said.
yeah,
There's nothing in the model that allows you to designate open space. So right off the bat, we would have put something in our application to EOHLC that goes outside their model. And so they're gonna have to look at that especially. But the problem is that no matter what you do, if you increase the open space over the 30% that we have now. You're decreasing the number of units, you're changing the density, and we are back to the numbers.
So there was open space in the model. It was just backed out again. So for each lot, there was an open space percentage and then it was added back in.
Well, so the model has lots of things that you can use and lots of parameters because like FARs, because the communities use FARs. We don't use FARs, so we didn't use that as a way of setting density. We don't use contiguous open space as a requirement for development, so we didn't use that.
We were trying to make as few changes as we could to existing zoning.
So, I mean, that, I'm just,
And then remember, this also goes through site plan review. So during the review, you'll have the opportunity to look at things like that. And again, what we're dealing mostly with small lot developments, so they're gonna have a front yard, might have a driveway, they probably want to have a backyard. It may not be contiguous, but they will, have green space and, so you may not even be able to have 20%, it might be 15 and 15 is how you get to 30%.
And we do have public open spaces specified in the design standards. So at line 455 through 463, there's basically public open spaces, and that's,
I don't think that means anything.
That's in the Beaver Dam.
That's probably.
yes,
gonna be-
right, which is
yeah.
primarily where you're thinking of it, as opposed to some homeowner, who wants to make a 3-family.
So it's fine. I'm not gonna get consensus here. I think a lot of residents will look for that, so I wanted to raise that. And then, so I would like to very much make sure that this says structures and impervious surface.
Yes,
not
we've got to have that in there. We're seeing violations of that all over town.
Okay, let's put it in.
Even if it
Yes.
has to be a separate line, with the same percentages, if you feel you've got to have the
I don't know,
structure,
I'd have to check with. them
yeah, but
whether-
a separate line, I mean, you've got to have the
Right.
maximum structures, and because otherwise the whole lot can be paved over.
I missed that parameter. You're right. I wonder what would happen if we put in, it'd be interesting to know what would happen if we put a number in there. I'd not change the density.
Literally.
Why?
Well, I think there are a number of problems. One of the problems is what is contiguous. You have a setback all the way around the building, so the open space is by definition gonna be contiguous
Hmm.
anyway. Unless you're gonna say it has to be, certain dimensions, which then gets to be impossible.
I don't exactly know what open space is. Does it include parking?
No.
No.
Because 30% includes parking. But we've limited our footprint to 70%, but then we got
No.
parking.
Our structures are limited to 40%. Our structures and parking are 70%, and I'm saying, or 60%, depending on the location, and I'm saying you need structures and impervious surface total of that same amount as you have for structures and parking.
Like we currently.
Yeah, that's,
Like, that's our current code, and that's a very sensitive area. We had 2 applications for ZBA last month that we sent them back over coverage violations. And said, you gotta redo your plans.
And so besides parking, what's happening? Walkways and.
Concrete walkways, patios, and what we do is we make them use pervious surface rather than impervious, because we have such a flooding issue that you need the impervious surface to drain it through. Pervious, sorry. So we often make them change out driveways to pavers instead of asphalt.
Yeah, I think we should have one.
You
Okay.
include
I think there's agreement on that.
yeah, okay.
areas as well in the collection.
Oh, they have that in,
Because one of the
water
issues.
resources districts have drainage requirements.
And then to clarify on, just to go to the accessory structure, is there anybody objecting to adding a height limit, the same as the underlying zoning, which is 1.5 stories?
25 feet.
That's fine.
Okay. Great, and then special.
I had a question on that line on number 4, so it's saying in the Beaver Dam area that an accessory structure could be 15 feet from the side and the rear lot lines. I think that's very close. I mean, that abuts conservation land, and wetlands up there, I believe. Our current setbacks for front and side are 150 and 100 respectively, so I think falling down to 15 is drastic.
But they also have to pay attention to the wetland buffers.
And now they have to come for a special permit for accessory structures. Based on. a
And
prior
they have to
discussion.
get order
Right.
conditions from the,
But if we stipulate 15 feet, we can't say in a special permit 20 feet. I mean, it's 15 feet, so I am voicing the concern. I think that's very close.
What would you suggest?
40 feet.
Well, District A,
I mean, it would be a bit
Is-
stab in the dark, but I think we currently have the 150 and the 100 be.
Well,
Because
the-
that makes sense for commercial, so if it's housing, I mean, I don't know, I just know 15 is very close.
We have 50 and 50 and 50 for the multifamily homes.
Right,
So
but
This
the,
is saying that the
Accessory,
accessory units, structures can be closer to a. I don't know.
Yeah, so typically in a larger multifamily development, they will have rows of garages kind of behind the buildings. So that some of the units, people who want to have a garage can rent one as well. So typically, the buildings have to be toward the middle of the site, but they have the garages around the perimeter of the site, so.
It's
Our-
not too,
our
it's not too
existing-
tough on the project to have a bigger setback for those garages.
It is
In
because
fact,
we limit
Yeah.
what we can do with the site development to be responsive to the site conditions. I mean, these setbacks start to get kind of
Well,
arbitrary.
if
You're
they're,
moving
if
everything
they've got
on site.
if they've done the bulldozing and the blasting to put the apartment building in the middle of the site, it's actually more expensive to put the carports.
You're assuming that you're blasting and bulldozing. And
Well,
it depends on
this
the
is
site, but I
Manchester.
just think we're limiting our flexibility
Yeah.
through the special permit process to get to good site design by coming up with these dimensions that are arbitrary.
today, our accessory structure setback tend to be half of what our setback is for the primary structure. So if you changed it from 15 to 25 feet, that would be half of. That would be consistent with the way our zoning is now.
And then why on 126 does it say an additional 15 feet? You adding that to the 25 that you're suggesting?
that's the front
That's for the
setback.
front.
That's just the front.
Right, but why not make it just consistent?
What I'm
Saying-
saying is we would have our existing zoning theory
Mhm.
is that accessory structures are half the distance
Right.
to the property line
Right.
than the primary. So they're closer by 50%
Right.
of what the primary is.
So that is.
So if
the
you've got
rule.
50 for the primary, maybe if you had 25 feet for the accessory, that's the 50%.
so the setback is met in a residential district to protect the neighbors. I believe. In this case, the neighbors are
Commercial uses.
Right.
Rural.
beavers. I
Conservation, yes, well,
mean, they do have to get an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission.
Right.
It's not like they're gonna. So the wetlands are gonna be protected one way or the other.
And I can tell you that when they built got a ZBA special permit, whatever we had to give them for their new building, COMCOM made them remove parking along the COMCOM side.
Hmm.
Because it was encroaching too far, so they made them pull it all back.
This is
So
for the storage.
this is
facilities.
Beaver Dam, yeah. So COMCOM is paying attention to that.
It seems to me that out there, my opinion is out there with the 15, with the special permit that the 15 feet, the Laura's point, is reasonable and that we don't want to totally limit the opportunities for design options. If you encroach an additional 20 X feet, you limit the
Provide more opportunity for open space.
right. Yeah, I think the other question that we don't know the answer to yet, that bears on this, is if in the CHOD, there are no opportunities for a variance,
No opportunities for what? Yeah.
So if you want to have a garage and you can't get a variance for good design to put it, say we increase it to 50 feet, to put it at 40 feet, and that knocks out the entire opportunity for a multifamily house. Well, to qualify, then it's,
I was just suggesting 25 instead of 50.
whatever,
to-
X, whatever it is, I think that we should, I personally should
be
leave it and let
consistent
the
with
special
what we do.
permit process handle
Deal with it.
Yeah, I do think that this variance question is extremely important, and we don't know the answer to that, right?
No, I don't know what's.
Emily was researching. My opinion is that in the CHOD, they cannot use a special permit or variance to go outside of the requirements. If they want to do something else, they would have to do the underlying zoning. And I asked her to research that.
Okay.
Because this is by right, saying if you want to do something by right, you have to meet all of these qualifications, which would say, okay, then you can't get a special permit or a variance.
For example, we set like 25 feet for the
Uh-huh.
garage. And then they say, well, along this side, it would be better if we pushed it back another 5 feet. So we get enough room.
Do what,
to-
20 feet or
to do- yeah,
30
to
feet?
20 feet, so that we need a variance for 5 feet for this row of parking garages, right? That has nothing to do with whether you can fundamentally build the housing or not. It's an extra accessory structure. Why couldn't they apply for a variance for that?
Well, we've changed the accessory structures to be a special permit.
Yes, but if they
I don't
wanted to,
believe-
but if they wanted to build it within the setback, it's a dimensional variance.
Right? I just, it goes against the whole theory of this law.
Well, I think this is what we need to
And
find
that's,
out.
Emily's
Yeah.
supposed to be researching it for us.
The more specific example is if you have a 6,000 square foot lot, and the best place to put your multifamily unit is within,
Then setback.
10 feet of the side lot, you need a variance.
Or even, but
you know, that,
But even if you allowed a variance, then you would allow lots less than 6,000 square feet.
right, and then, or if
And
somebody
that's
wants,
contrary to the law.
right, so but I think the setbacks are the are gonna be the place where people are gonna push. I think people will understand that the minimum lot size is minimum lot size, but the setbacks, to me, are
We
a
don't-
place where, given the topography of things and the rocks and that people may say, the right place to put my or to expand my existing structure is to go 1 foot into the setback. And the question is, does that now bump them out of a CHOD? And, or can they go to the ZBA? But I don't think we know the answer to that. But I think that it, to me, helps me understand whether we want to be generous or depending on what the definition that is of with setbacks.
But are we talking just about the accessory structure? So the parking
And then-
garage or the shed or the gazebo, which
Right.
has to have a special permit? Is that where you can discuss
Maybe that.
what makes sense?
You
for some
can't,
dimensional
under a
relief?
special permit, you can't, let them go further into the setback.
So the setback is pretty,
Yeah,
If you're gonna violate any of your dimensional requirements, it's gonna be a variance.
so we.
Unless
Yeah.
you're already non-conforming and you're already violating the setback
Well, and a variance is hardship, so it'd be tough to prove hardship.
due to topography.
Yeah.
We need to find that out.
Yeah, or due to the number of cars which we're requiring in Beaver Dam.
That's not for variance.
No, but I'm just saying, if you're trying to make that layout and you want to build a garage and we've made setbacks that don't work with that plan,
Right.
I'm just cautioning us to try not to make it so that you can't, be so restrictive that you just can't make a good site design.
I agree with you.
I need to ask a question back on the table because I overlooked something. You brought up the base unit. In the models that I received, the base unit size is 2,500 feet in 3 of the districts.
Right.
And that does not show up on this table at all.
Oh, is there, okay.
That's what we're saying he needs to add.
What
Yeah,
we didn't know,
But
what we
also-
didn't make clear was the fact that Beach Street, C Street, and Allen to Lincoln have a base unit size of 2,500.
Right.
That really changes things. That means that 6,000 feet is no longer 3.
so that number is wrong. It needs to be 6,500.
Which
No, it doesn't mean that the minimum lot size is
Right.
6,500. It
Doesn't have
means
to
that
be.
you have to have 6,500 to build a
Yes,
3.
yes, you do.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is you can start building on 2,500 foot lot.
I don't think that's the issue.
No.
The problem is that the model itself has a specific base unit size.
Right.
For 3 of the areas which are, it
This
is
is-
2,500 feet, and that doesn't show up anywhere.
Right.
You
Right.
have to
That's
have
what
a-
we're saying.
But
So
the
Richard,
minimum lot area is still the 6,000.
Right.
Yes, that doesn't change.
So he's gonna add a line.
okay, so you're saying the additional lot area for those 3 should be
No,
2,500?
it's the first unit is one number, and then there's a different number for the additional units.
That's what you just said.
Yeah,
No, she's saying the same for
well,
all
I'm trying to
units.
understand.
So maybe
But
Richard
Richard-
and.
And that's the
Mark
line we
have,
talked
like,
about earlier of adding in.
But Richard, that minimum lot area would change to 6,500.
Not if it's not in the model that way.
Well, I know it's not the model that way, but it would automatically change to
Automatically change it, right.
6,500 because if you need.
Well, it wouldn't change that number. It would, the densities are already computed based on the 2,500, so we're okay.
Well, but that should match, minimum lot area should match what you can do for 3 units.
I don't think so.
Well, that's,
Well, I don't know, but I don't think so.
well, you couldn't,
When you couldn't have 3 units
you
on it,
couldn't
you
have
would
3
need it.
units.
Well, I guess I don't know exactly what minimum lot area means in this.
Yeah, that's the
That's really,
way,
I guess, what I should
that's
say.
how I got to that.
Well, let me
because-
ask a different question, which is, should the model, if the model was made as that base unit as 2,000, so that we go back to 6,000 square feet for 3, family. Does that allow us to reduce the density in Beaver Dam or, by 4 units? Sorry.
No.
No, okay.
This should
Simple
reflect,
answer.
this should reflect the lines that are input into the compliance model, whether they make sense or not, it should reflect those numbers.
Yeah.
And if we input 6,000 in the compliance model, but had a 2,500 for the first lot, then it should say that.
So I'm leaving the first unit. Okay.
All right. Moving right along. I think we're at parking.
Oh, I had something.
No, I'm
with
into 5
exceptions.
exceptions.
So
Yeah.
Exceptions.
25% is way too high. We have nothing today, and we had one out on Kingsway that was probably maybe 15%, we made them cut it back. Because if it's 25%, they're gonna be using it for living space.
Well, they can.
Sure, yeah, okay.
You
That-
don't check on them, Chris,
We
yeah.
We don't have a percentage in our current,
Give you a
zone,
star.
but if we're gonna put a percentage in, I would put it more at 5 or 10%.
I would even step back and say, so our current zoning doesn't allow ventilators, silos, or other ornamental features. So I don't know why we're not being consistent with our current.
Right. I agree.
Why don't we just make it consistent?
So can I just go back to the, sorry, real quick, the 15 feet setbacks and accessory structures, if we want to stay consistent with our existing zoning, why wouldn't we have that be at 50% of 50% and 25 feet?
I think the idea is to not limit the design. Because
Right now,
because the assumption is there's not a variance process.
Okay,
Where if you have underlying zoning and you wanted to approach slightly into your setback because you do a variance, a hardship, there is a variance process. If there is the variance process for the CHOD, then I think I would like to come back to think about that. personally. I think then the variance process.
would suggest maybe even talking to some of our architectural friends to see if you went ahead and put the impact, if you treated it the same way and the setbacks was 25 feet, I think that would make sense. I don't think it would materially change the design characteristics, but that's not taking into consideration the topography, which obviously.
So
At least it gives it a little more of a buffer.
Right.
under 5, could I build an apartment building with an 8-story viewing platform?
No,
Well, it depends how big
I
your,
thought we limited them to 10 feet high, 10 feet above the roof line.
Well, I don't see why I couldn't.
Right, under this, you're right.
well, it's 25% of your ground floor area. So what's your ground floor
Oh,
area?
I'm gonna have a little target, a little tiny tower, so tenants can go up and see the ocean.
Well, and that's the thing. It says, so I had a note here too, like, so could you have roof decks up there?
Yes. No, that's
No.
habitable. That's habitable.
Living there, you just.
That's habitable.
Yeah.
Okay. Our current definition is chimneys, spires, or towers not used for human occupancy may exceed 10 feet above the height limit. So we have a
That's
10-foot
reasonable.
restriction today.
yes, let's do
We
it.
use the
Just-
appropriate
let's do it.
language.
Let's just do it.
What definition is that?
It's under, height, it's the top of page 28. Under 5.5 height regulations. It's the first paragraph on that page 28. Of the version I'm looking at.
5.5.
5.5 height regulations,
Yes, okay.
end of that first paragraph.
Maybe can we
Fire
correct it?
towers not used for, okay, I have it on page
Put it in there.
29.
What?
Let's put it in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that.
consistent.
Yep.
So are you saying to leave the 25% of the ground floor? area?
No, get rid of it.
Just
It's not
Just
in
do
our
the
current.
10-foot higher.
Yeah, it's not in our current zoning, and anything else, any you pick is just arbitrary.
Right.
How about renewable energy installations?
We don't, I believe building, they're looking at the height of the roof, not to stuff on top of it. And today we don't have restrictions. You can put solar on, you know,
Because our solar bylaw isn't that large.
right. But on residence, the height is the peak of the roof. It doesn't reference, and I think that those things that are going on, I don't know, we don't have anything like this currently. It seems like overkill to me, but I don't.
So I would agree with you on that. This is boilerplate out of the sample bylaw. I didn't understand, so one, we don't have it, so I don't know why we would add it here, and two, it's saying the possibility of waiving height and setbacks. So I don't know what an air source, heat pump equipment, or energy storage, like what that would be, that you'd have to waive the setback. So I think getting back to like, if it's solar panels, that's one thing, but if we're talking about utilities.
Condensers, they're like.
Could be a road heat.
That's-
What's the,
Heat
that's
pump.
Yeah.
what's on the porch out here, condenser units.
And they could be not on the ground, but up in the building, on the side of the building.
The intention is to allow for more green buildings or
Right.
greener buildings, I would assume, which is not a bad idea.
Wouldn't all that be addressed in a site plan review?
I would think so, but it says all it says here is the site plan review authority may waive. So there's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not saying you have a right to do this and it's gonna be this way.
That also says they will not create a significant detriment to a butters.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That doesn't seem-
And that's right out of the model bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we done with that section?
Go back to.
That's a long.
And we're gonna take comments right after, I think before site plan review, take a break. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty exciting.
Okay, off-street parking.
Off-street parking, aside from some little editing, I didn't make any change except for adding structured parking. That would be traditional multi-level parking garage. So I use that term, and that should be allowed by a special permit from the planning board. So which would probably occur during the site plan review process. Just in the Newport Powder House in the Beaver Dam Road District.
Isn't structured parking an accessory?
He's defining it now.
So that's the thing is that, now that we got to this, is that perhaps we should, in the definition, which is a little further back, perhaps we should allow a certain height for,
Structured parking.
or structured
Different
parking.
from the accessory structure.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which would allow, 3 levels.
More than one level.
More than one level, exactly. And then we can all discuss whether 3 or 4
Can you put
levels
that
is
as a divisional
appropriate.
table rather than the definitions?
Yeah, that makes sense to put in the.
Or just, this is part of the same section.
We're
I
just
don't know.
added to this, just saying they shall
That's what
not
I'm thinking,
exceed,
just add it to this.
Yeah.
yeah, shall not
I
exceed.
think
It's only allowed in those 2 districts, so
but you go looking for that table for dimensional standards, and if it's in there, you can find it. I think it's inconsistent to put it in prose in the,
So move it up to number 7.
number table 1, to table of dimensional standards.
oh, you mean to
No,
that-
we have the,
Put it as a note there.
no, they're not notes. Number 4, accessory structures has the height limits in it so that you can
Sorry.
move the structured parking up to number 7. Right above the
Number
9.4.6.
7.
Right, so you'd add us, right.
Move it up.
Add something like that. Below
Where's
exceptions.
number 7?
Line 138.
Doesn't-
Line 138, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
It
fine.
doesn't exist yet, you have to.
Just move structured parking up to line 138A.
I see.
And have a height restriction in there.
Yes.
So what would you like for a height restriction? How many levels, what height? I mean, think you
That's all
should at
depending on
least
how many
allow-
cars you're gonna
Well,
park.
it depends if one level's under the
That's
ground.
you got grade, 1 elevated level and 2 elevated, that's a lot of parking spaces.
We've
It's
got,
gonna be subject to special permit.
doesn't matter, you still have to have the
You
height
still have to have
restrictions
some
for a special permit.
Well, it certainly should be higher than the main building.
No,
Right.
shouldn't be.
Right.
So we have the main building at 4 stories and 45 feet in those two areas.
What about, how about, what did Denny and Gar advise if we did it, 1 story lower than the primary, structure? So in Beaver Dam and Newport Park, it would be 3 stories and 35 feet, and
And a half a story above grade for the parking.
You're gonna require them to
No,
below
but
grade parking,
allow it.
allow it.
So could you could have an underground garage.
Well, it's not really an underground garage. It's,
No, I'm saying, but you could.
oh, underground garages are great.
Yeah.
They're incredibly expensive.
1,000 and up for a space.
You know, you'd have to be charging $8,000 a month of rent to
Well, we
support
have
an
no problems
underground.
doing that in Manchester.
No, that's true. Very common.
okay, so height restrictions on the parking,
Structure.
structure is basically
A
1
story of a parking garage is different from a story
Yeah,
of
but
a
in terms
residence.
of height,
I know, you just can't pick an arbitrary number and say that's the height of the parking garage and make it equal
Or
story.
you could say like
35
3
feet.
levels
Right.
and not greater than, you know.
Yeah.
I would agree with Mark, you know,
35
establish the
feet.
levels you
So,
want to use.
Yeah.
so if they stick one underground, they can only put 2 above. But if they, because of, let's say, granite, and they need to build it on top, they're not gonna blast the granite away, and they have to go up a little bit. 35 feet gives them enough room to build the structure and still have 3 levels.
All of our definitions of height are from pre-construction grades, so it would allow a level underground plus 3 above, if you're gonna say 3 stories.
Well, but I
Well, you
think,
could just say
but we can,
35
I
feet
can
above
write
grade,
it, so
right?
we can write it.
Yeah, 35 feet above grade.
And
Yeah.
the renewable energy installation, that's, if you're building a structure parking garage, that's likely to be ready enough with that stuff, right?
Yes.
So that should maybe apply to
Right.
both.
And then in Newport Park, or
It's the same dimensional for the prime, for the building, 4 stories and 45 feet.
okay,
Both the same.
all right.
Okay, we,
Agree on 35 feet.
none parking?
No, we did have a comment from Sarah Pierce, I think she's left.
Why, I had a, I had a comment on parking before we go to public. So on the surface parking, which is not for the Beaver Dam, but for all other CHOD districts, we've got currently 1.5 spaces minimum. And I want to ask the board to consider a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2 per unit. Because I think that will allow more flexibility on these small, dense village lots to where we don't take up the whole lot for a use that is surface parking and nothing else. I mean, it's 1 less tree you can plant, it's 1 more tree you gotta remove. It just really limits the flexibility of people who have a house and want to develop a couple of in-lot apartments to say, I got my parking spaces as required for my house, and then the additional units, if I've got, 2 units, I've got anywhere, or if I got 1 unit, I've got anywhere from 1 to 2, and if you got 3, you've got anywhere from 1 to 4. But the rounding up, so effectively we're getting to 2 parking spaces every time we do an additional small, potentially small unit on a dense lot. I just really think we ought to consider having a range that gives us more flexibility through the site plan review and gives the people who own these places and are trying to accommodate, Nana who doesn't drive so much anymore, or Nana and, daughter who moved home and they're sharing a car. It's just like a little more flexibility to do responsible site design.
That case makes a lot of sense for Nana, but it is problematic to me when I think about 3 families putting more pressure on downtown parking. We've put the lion's share of this development, potential development, in a very crowded area downtown. And people don't have 1 car per unit anymore. I mean, it's just very uncommon. So I'm worried that we're going to push more load onto very crowded downtown parking streets.
I'm worried about the historic character of our village and the density of that and the model that was developed before parking.
Right.
And then
Taking
making
that over.
assumptions about people who have more than 1 car, live in a certain kind of place and just an expectation that it might be different for these kinds of units.
Yeah.
And
And
you can share some parking space.
isn't the process for all of these things, for any multifamily unit to go through to a site plan review?
It doesn't matter.
So
you
wait, but if you have a flexible 1 to 2 in site plan review, it's
Yeah.
considered, and you can consider the particulars of the situation.
You're gonna,
I also had a completely astonishing
you're gonna be restricted.
conversation with a resident who said, ugh, too much parking, don't make so much parking. There's already too much parking, it wrecks the village.
You're gonna hear the opposite.
Yeah.
too, and-
Yeah.
Because people are gonna go, yeah, they have 5 spaces at this existing 3-unit building, but when they have parties, guests, whatever, they're all over the street. and
But you're not making
Yeah.
parking for guests.
Right.
Well, we
Right.
don't allow
But-
parties, no parties.
But my point is that, you know, in a 3-unit building, you have someone with 2 cars, someone else with 2 cars, and someone with 1 car. 5 works.
Yeah.
But if you only allow between 1 and 3, and I'm a builder, I can get away with putting 3 units, 3 parking spaces.
Well, but you're gonna be subject as a builder to site plan review.
Yeah,
And if-
but
Then we
if I
restrict
can
that in
have
site
that
plan review.
flexibility,
Yeah,
I mean, I think.
Sure you can.
no.
But you can also, you know, you're marketing it to, build site, parking costs money, right? So it makes the cost of that unit go up. And so if you're marketing to someone who says, I only have 1 car, or I don't really need a car, then, you know, the market will reflect that, and you can have these units and not require so much surface parking. I mean, we have this beautiful downtown village. We're trying to create more surface parking. That's not what makes this.
I
I
have,
think we're gonna
reason
reduce
we
the number of
use-
cars in the downtown by changing the number of units of cars that the builder has to put in. You're not gonna change the number of cars, you're just gonna change the number of parking spaces. Because people are gonna have the cars that they're gonna have.
And some of them might have fewer than we
But I
expect.
thought
Yeah.
that we decided to keep the 1.5 that we have in zoning today because of public feedback.
There was a
Over
lot of
parking.
public feedback
Right.
about
It's the
parking.
first thing at
Yeah.
that Saturday seminar at the high school. The first question I got asked over and over is how much parking are you going to require? And so I think I don't disagree with you, Laura, except that I think that people come, that the number of parking spaces available to in their unit, whether they're renting or owning, does not dictate how many cars they own. And they buy how many cars they own based on what they believe their needs are. Unfortunately, I think people, you know, we have 2 drivers in my house right now and 2 cars. And so I don't think we change car habits by limiting the number of parking spaces. And we want to pass this thing. I think parking was the number 1 thing that we heard.
I understand, and I'm just raising it here because I think it's irresponsible to keep maximizing, to require these minimum parking spaces in our historic downtown. And I think that providing a range of 1 to 2 provides choice and conversation, and it's not all developers coming in, like people own these houses that they want to convert, and I wouldn't want to convert my house to 5 parking spaces, you know, I want to have a yard, and I want to have places I want to plant trees, and I want to do other things besides park all over my lot. And that doesn't equal open space, in my opinion, but I just will say that I think we're not thinking, like, we're trying to provide diversity of housing choices. That also means diversity of lifestyles, right? Like, if you don't want a single family house with multiple parking or a parking garage, you might just be happy with a smaller unit. You don't want to, you got 1 car, you don't want to pay for the expenses of another car, you know, one of you takes a train, or you're a single mom, like I have been and had 1 car for much of my life. Like, there just are other models out there, and we're trying to create housing for those other models and other options, and the parking kind of goes along with it. So it's not about behavior change, it's about understanding that there are different units and family units, and this is a way to accommodate them.
So Sarah, just,
Laura.
Laura, pardon. Laura, your name is Laura, you're Sarah.
Sarah.
Everyone's you.
Sarah.
Yeah, but, just anecdotally,
Yeah,
I have 7 units.
yeah,
I got 2 tenants out of the 7 are 2-person
yeah.
tenants. And 5 are one-person tenants.
Yeah.
I have 7 parking spaces. We've never had a parking problem. Every one of those apartments uses one parking space and they're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. So it, you know, I don't know whether it's self-selecting or not.
I
That
think
could
to
be,
some degree it is, right?
No,
If you market a
but,
unit that's got one
I
parking
mean,
space,
you know,
then I get somebody.
that's
who's
my
got-
experience
Yeah.
for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So,
And I think if you allow the flexibility and have site plan review, you've got a choice
I
there.
don't
And I
think site
think a
plan-
lot of times people
No.
asking about parking are thinking, I mean, when this whole project began, everyone was thinking about, we're gonna turn this down into Rantoul Street. It's gonna be big apartment buildings. They're just thinking about developers smashing things down. And I think there is some lingering about that. But I think talking about, when people think about their own property and what they have to do to make that property available for someone who's gonna allow them to stay in place in their own house, and they want an employee who's gonna do that, and all of a sudden they have to have 3 parking places, and there's no place to do it without paving over everything.
So
So-
I think the problem is here is that we're trying to solve a bigger problem than we have the capacity to do. And
probably.
maybe this is a topic that we should be discussing for the entire town, not just for
Mhm.
the
Well, but
39 acres.
I think that's a cop out, frankly. We're talking about smaller, dense,
I
dense
think,
areas.
But we've got to get
Smaller
this through town meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just saying my piece here. I
right,
think.
but putting in
They
a
changed the rules,
range
yeah.
does not change that. I
Yeah,
think.
If you have a range, you can't tell the developer, you have a range of 3 to 5, but you've got to have 5 and you can have 3. Site plan review cannot dictate the number of
could say-
spaces.
We could give a waiver for 1-bedroom apartments, I suppose.
But who are you to
Yeah,
say
but then
that, it's a 1-bedroom apartment that has 1 car. It could be a 2-bedroom apartment.
with one-
I can tell you, I lived for 20 years
Say,
in one house with 2
there's a lot
bedrooms.
of zoning across the country
And 1
that
car.
says 1 car for 1 bedroom.
And it's written in 1970, like we're in a
That's
new
not
era.
our zoning.
Stuff, but it's
not our zoning. I
it's
mean,
not our zoning, it's the problem.
again, we were trying to keep it as close to existing zoning
Yeah,
as we
that's a good
could
point.
to, with the hope of getting it passed. And if we start trying to make changes, it's not gonna go through.
And it's,
So if
it's,
that's the reasoning, then,
Not saying you
Well,
can't do it.
So parking space is defined as dimensional, whatever
Yes.
the dimensions are, so.
18 by 9, I think.
18 by 9, so you can have 2 parking spaces for free, that could be, like we've all lived, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we're not talking about,
an 8,000-foot lot, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't fit that, you can't fit 5 parking spaces and 3 units. It's like, it's not gonna work dimensionally. So I'll leave it, I'm not gonna keep pounding
Well,
this.
it does work in the model.
It works.
Yeah,
Or-
it works.
Have you actually test fit
That's what the model does, yeah.
with the amount of structures? and
With
the
our
amount of parking?
coverage.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
not gonna have much left over. But
No, not enough.
30%.
a little edge around it. Yeah. So anyhow, I've said my piece. I just think it's something we should be thinking hard about, particularly when we're talking about housing choice. This is not just the unit, but it's the amenities that go along with it.
Can I ask about, still with off-street parking, do we need to reference our current bylaw so that we are pulling in the parking size dimensions and trying not to back out and all of those things? I thought it was mentioned somewhere else in the back and I can't find it, but I thought it should be mentioned here as well,
Or
to
can that
reference
be-
6.0.
Can that be done under site plan review? That would give you the flexibility, a certain number of parking spots, and then under site plan review, you could consider making them smaller if you wanted to for subcompacts. Have some flexibility in the parking layout under site plan review and not cast it in concrete here, just have the number of spots. And then site plan review can look at the backing up and all that stuff.
Can you have it different in the site plan review that we reference in our current bylaw for this than we do for other site plan reviews?
So,
Hold on one second.
Update.
So later in here in the performance
It
standards,
does have,
in the general standards, under number 2B, says the requirements of section 6.1. Oh, yeah, line 2, yes, thank you. 250 says the sections of the requirements of section 6.1 off-street parking
Oh, shall I?
shall apply with the following exception, which is the table.
Right.
Which is superseded by the section in this one. So the other standards about, in this section about setbacks, parking area plantings, bike parking, all of these location, these all apply.
Okay, so we don't need to reference it here.
It's referenced on line 250.
Okay. And then did we need to define parking for the mixed use? Or are we referencing the 6.0 table?
We're not
It's not a
doing
mixed
mixed
use
use.
Defining
district.
mixed use.
We're not doing
We're
mixed use.
allowing people to put in commercial.
That is an interesting question, though.
So we don't
What
require
if It's
parking.
not an apartment. It's not an apartment. Is there a parking requirement?
Yes.
Yes.
There is, it's per, like 1 per
that's
300
what I'm-
square feet of,
That's my question. Are we
space.
referring back to 6.0 properly?
yeah, there is separate parking requirements for.
How would that apply?
Why?
How would it apply if I am constructing a 2-story commercial apartment piece, where do I see my exact parking
It said the parking.
based on the number of residential units?
So,
Does it say residential units?
So does it meet the lot requirements
so what I
to have off-street?
What I could do, because the table 6.1 is broken up into several sections, there's a residential section, community facilities section, accessory use section, commercial section. What we could do is just exempt it from table 6.1, the residential section. So all the other
That makes
parking
sense.
rest would
requirements
apply.
would apply. So if you are gonna do, you know, a retail space on the first floor, you have to provide parking for that retail space.
That would make
That's a
sense.
good, that's a good
Start,
solution.
but your, a residential requirements, which essentially are the same.
Of
Some reason.
use that we're under this underlying use.
Well, our current ones just are convoluted because they do the rounding up for people.
Mhm.
And to make it more complicated rather than really saying.
Residential parking requirements from table 6.1 is superseded by this section.
do we want to, in, sort of jumped to line 250, in the site plan review, include any ability in the review parking requirements in that process based on we want to give ourselves that flexibility in the site plan review? And that would probably be the place to do it. wouldn't it?
I'd say yes. I mean, if you're redeveloping the cargo block, you're putting housing on top of that.
Right,
You don't want to tear down a section of it so they can fit a parking spot in.
right. Seems to me that that would be a place to.
So you said if it's mixed use?
No, there should.
Allow
be-
commercial.
Some sort of
Just saying under the
Filing.
site plan review
Site
parking,
plan.
that
Parking.
you would have the right to
Right
waive,
to,
waive the
work,
requirements.
waive the requirements, right, to reduce the requirements.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd waive,
Right.
reduce.
Yeah.
Which
What do
gives
people
you the
think about that?
flexibility.
Yeah. What do people think about that?
I think
Yeah,
that's-
I mean,
I
more
like
flex-
flexibility
that
is a good idea.
I'm just never
Yeah.
that much in favor of the uncertainty of what may be waived in the future.
So my opinion with that is that's problematic. I think people's concern is that if you don't require off-street parking, it just goes on the street and so you're not really helping the town character or maintaining the downtown area. You're just exacerbating an issue. So I think
Parking
that's,
equates to downtown character. I
Well, I
really
think-
just-
I
That's
think
part
you
of
have-
it's the
you have to-
opposite of
Yeah.
downtown
Look at-
character.
You have to actually think about the districts,
Right.
the layout of our district. So the layout of our big district is along Pine Street, where you're gonna see most of the properties being redeveloped. You don't really have on-street parking on Pine Street.
Yes, you do.
Do you?
Oh, yes.
But only much,
Down
not
towards-
much.
Yeah, not much, it's fluid.
It's very hard to predict how many
So-
cars an apartment complex is going to have. I mean, we wrestle with it continuously in our property. It doesn't have so much to do with unit size always either. You just don't know.
And it depends on who happens to live.
Right.
If there's turnover, there's sale, there's.
I've often had 2 cars when I was single.
You are probably.
I think that I think if you want any flexibility, the place to put it is in the site plan review process.
Yep.
The ability to reduce it
Neighbor input, and there might be
Right.
some really
Yes.
good design,
and
character of
the
the.
planning board's elected, and people don't like what the planning board is doing, then they don't re-elect people. If they are doing too many reductions in parking.
So Sarah, I like your idea of giving some flexibility.
This is a little bit like our goal sometimes. We'll look at a piece of property and we'll say, well, that property is not going to be redeveloped. It's going to be too expensive to develop that. But you don't know that. Things change.
But we don't have to grant the waiver either,
Right.
Well,
Right.
or the reduction.
Should we vote on this one?
I think it's a vote, this is a
Yeah.
vote. Okay, who is in favor of allowing some flexibility in the site plan review process for parking?
Reducing the.
Reducing.
Reducing. And opposed? Looks like the reduction.
So I need some sort of standard or some sort of, can be reduced to something.
No less
based
than
on-
1 space per unit.
No less than 1 space per unit, provided the 1 spaces are 1-bedroom units or something like that.
No.
No.
Nope.
No,
No, you can't do that because it's gotta be for families.
but a developer would,
Gotta be
every
true.
developer, if they would ask for the one. So if we say we can reduce it,
Mary, I don't think that's correct.
well,
Because-
could I finish?
Sure.
So if we say, a condition like that, reduce it to 1 based on whatever, I think every developer will reduce that to 1 off-street parking. per unit.
No, then you can say no in site plan.
First you can say
You
no.
can't say
second-
no to 1 and yes to another.
And if you have reasons,
Well, you have to have reason.
Some standards or something written in order to either allow it down or require more.
I'm a resident worried about parking, and I look at that language. I'm going to assume that these units are going to be getting reduced parking.
Yes.
That's, I think, inevitable, yeah.
Well, again, Richard, I think you're making the same error that Mary is. Developers are trying to sell their properties, and if you don't have enough parking.
No, I'm not making my assumption about what the developers are going to do because I have no idea. But I'm making my assumption about what a resident would feel if they look at the zoning regulation. They're concerned about parking on their streets because it's always very tight. There's no room in the little parking lots. It's very tight and now it's going to get tighter. And I look at the language here and it says well, they can have fewer parking spaces than I'm allowed to have. I wanted to convert my house in a general district to 3 families. They're allowed to have fewer parking spaces, which are inevitably gonna push in this. So, I mean, we lost the vote. I know it's going to site review, but I just
You just
would
giving-
echo Mary's point that you put a specific minimum in there. I think, A, it's a flag for everybody that's concerned about parking. And B, it's a target for the developer. And I think for our purposes, we have to look at the developer as not necessarily being our friend. We hope he is. We hope he's a wonderful developer, but we don't know.
Maybe it's not a Developer at all, maybe it's your neighbor who's a family, you know, who wants to add some space,
I have some
add an apartment.
neighbor developers aren't always good neighbors.
I don't think we're assuming anything about the developer. I think we're assuming we have a general downtown area that's tight. And it has, you know, walls up to the street with not a lot of interruption by parking. And so we're encouraging that kind of wall, that street wall. And our businesses will,
Well,
we're encouraging business on the commercial on the ground floor and allowing residential. use
Cargill
above.
Limited and
It's not in our
is not in the
district.
CHOD, and the areas in the
Okay.
downtown are not in the CHOD.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think to Mark's earlier point, think about where our districts are.
Mhm.
You got Pine Street,
Yeah.
so Newport Park.
Yeah.
You've got Beach Street to Summer, where there
Elm
is
Street.
on-street parking, and 10 Summer Street has put the parking, hidden it sort of behind,
Mhm. Mhm.
to keep that character and pull the buildings toward the street. And then you go down, sort of think more
Yeah.
about the districts. Allen Ave there's no parking along Summer Street there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think, don't think of it as the downtown,
Yeah.
because that's our next hurdle, is what do we do
Mhm.
about commercial
Mhm.
and residential and keeping our commercial core
Mhm.
and that character.
Mhm.
That's not what we're talking about
Yeah.
with this.
Fair enough.
But we
So-
do have one downtown district.
Right, and so there is the downtown, the seaside variety or whatever, Richdale's to,
Mhm.
but,
That's standard.
That is right downtown in the core. I mean,
and that is
that's-
right downtown.
Yeah.
And, currently has a fair amount of impervious
It has
surface
and parking that's
cars.
right up to the street, right?
Right,
So it's not-
right, and our site plan review does say, bring the building
To the street.
to the
Correct.
street, put
Yeah.
the parking
Parking in back.
behind it.
Mhm.
And I think to Richard's point, if I were, the theoretical developer, in that case, I'd say there isn't on-street parking in ample, we already know that downtown on that hot July day is parking constrained, or in a snowstorm, or whatever, that it would be hard pressed in my mind to give significant reductions in parking.
We're not talking about publicly available parking. We're
No, I
talking
know.
about people in the units.
Right,
That parking
but
is reserved for them.
I think what you see is if you reduce the parking for the residential units in that area, they're gonna spill onto the street.
And it's
If they have
2 hour
more than one
parking.
car and they live a minute from the train station, like all they have to do is walk across the street at that point. So is there any flexibility, in those
Did
districts?
we make a decision?
I think we voted that,
Yeah.
Mark's point is that we need some sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
sort of bound.
Yeah, some sort of.
We-
I know this has been put to bed, but I'm gonna raise it again. Can't we say, if you got a 1-bedroom unit, you only need to have 1 parking space? And is that discriminatory in some way, or is it
Yes.
anti-family or
Well,
something like that?
What happens if you have 2 working
Right,
people in that 1-bedroom unit, one commuting to 495?
right.
Yeah,
But
No,
remember,
that's a
these,
problem.
these are supposed
I
to
agree.
be family-friendly units by definition.
okay, well, they can be family friendly, and if they're 2-bedroom units, they have to have 2 parking spaces. And that's family friendly.
We don't have anything in our zoning today that even looks at number of bedrooms. I don't think we want to introduce that.
I would agree with that.
I agree with that.
Okay,
How about,
just trying to find a light in the darkness, that's all.
It's similar to just say, something like the site plan review may reduce parking requirements by up to 20%. just put, or X%, whatever it is.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's good.
that's great, because it's
So that
flexible.
means 5 units could go to 4.
Right.
Great.
It's a little bit, that's really,
That's a good
that's a 3, that's sort of what we're talking about, your neighbor. So up to 20%. You, and
Okay,
that.
is that okay with everybody?
So-
Yeah,
That's good to
yeah.
me, still rounded up.
Good. Yeah, right.
By up to
20%.
up to 20% reduction.
All right, I'm gonna ask
We'll
if
do that.
anyone from the public has any comment at this.
Unfortunately, her comment I didn't see was that she wanted us to scroll through, and I apologize too. I didn't scroll through the.
Sarah?
Mr. Gates. Tim Gates, 2 Desmond Avenue. I've looked at the fall 3A. And it starts out, we want family-friendly units with children. And I've already pointed out before, the habitability rules for health, Board of Health, state law, state regulation. There's a basic number of 470 square feet. That includes master bedroom and 2 single bedrooms. And that's the absolute minimum unit. Plus apparently about 20 square feet for a bathroom, which is not in that 470. Now, the additional thing is a limit of 50% of the existing main residential unit as a setting point to achieve that number of 490. You've got to have a basic value over the 900 square feet cap on these additional units under 3A. Yep. So are you discussing accessory dwelling units? Now, I'm pointing out my problems with everything you folks have been doing. You can't have a development up in the other areas of the LCD. The units don't meet these family requirements.
The compliance model assumes 1,000 square feet per unit. And that's what all of our calculations are based on. And that's what we're required to do. And so Beaver Dam, you can build 100 units and have them be 1,000 square foot each. And they fit.
And one final point, Mr. Gates, we're not building anything. We're not required to build anything. Now, all we're doing is changing our zoning. If you're going to have a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size before you can do anything, you're gonna have 2,000 square feet for an additional unit. Means they have to start with an 8,000 square foot unit.
No,
Just for
we're building,
everybody in the downtown residential.
no, we're
area.
building it would be a 3,000 square foot structure containing 3 units of 1,000 square foot each.
On the 6,000 foot.
Right, and it
unit.
only needs
Sorry.
1,000 square foot footprint. That's what that's what the compliance model's using.
So,
We're compliant with.
okay, so, thank you for that. That's been, we're gonna try to keep our comments, so we keep moving to this. Hold on, we're gonna try to keep our comments to the, that was about 3 minutes. Town meeting, and we try to do 2 minutes, so if you have another comment, we'll take it later in the meeting, but,
This is only a very short one,
okay,
not even 2 minutes.
okay, great.
But you were talking about Pleasant Street, where they're going to be one of the districts?
No.
No,
No?
no,
No.
uh-uh.
Not Pleasant Pine.
Okay. Because the
Lower
Pleasant
Pine.
Street,
We're not talking about
sometimes
Pleasant.
Pass through because they park on the street.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and-
that's not what we're talking about, so,
Pleasant.
okay, great, thanks, let's
All
go to
right,
site plan
site plan
review.
review.
Any comments on screen?
No, but, she left, so there wasn't a comment. If anybody on screen that I'm not seeing has a comment, please speak up.
I don't see anyone, Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Gail. All right.
Okay, design review,
So,
site plan,
no, site plan.
excuse me, site plan review.
So there was several comments related to the first three items of the section, so I made some edits to clarify these sections and address some of the concerns. So first one is a clarification, moved, the consistency section that goes later in the, where it talks about approvals, that's later, then the permitting authority of site plan review, that is, we don't need that. And then under review requirements, oh, well, that's where I added it. I just moved it to, that should not say the, I tried to remove all the permitting authority, should say planning board. So. And so that's the rest of the section, and just some spelling and edits till you get to number 6. Which is, references the actual site plan review, which clarified this. There were several people commented about A and B. What's that mean? That's all you have to do is pay the fees, and so that kind of meets some of the. So I took that out. Get the project phasing. There was some comments about the fact that there's no limitation on how long a second phase of a project's good for. So I said, the unbuilt phase was valid for 2 additional years after the issuance of an occupancy permit for the first phase. And the planning board may extend those approvals of the unbuilt phases for 1-year periods, provided the phase is still in compliance with its bylaws. It's getting permitted under this law.
We can comment there. It's a grammatical comment.
Okay.
And it's regards only on line 232, and actually there's another only. And if they're in the wrong place, they can change the meaning. So on line 232, I'm gonna suggest we just strike the word only. Say the unbuilt phase will be valid for 2 years, not valid after 2 years.
Yep.
So strike only and strike after.
Yep.
Will be valid for 2 years.
Mhm.
And then, forgive me, I'm just gonna back up to
That's okay.
structured parking, which had an only in it, which I think contains the meaning. And that was line 150. Just either strike only or say shall be allowed only in the Newport Powder House District, the only is in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Be allowed only in the
I agree.
district. Okay, thank you.
I have one comment, and I like that the section got cleaner in terms of the language. But under site plan review, point number 2, procedure and submission requirements. I think it would be worth, when you refer to this other set of sections that's in the underlying zoning law. I think it's worth adding a phrase or a sentence that says something to the effect that this procedure will require notice to abutters. Because it's something people have been very nervous about. And
I don't think you want to put that in the zoning law. That's
well,
controlled by the state.
isn't,
Probably already in the.
it's in the,
It's already in there.
it's in those sections, Sarah.
It's
But I
already
would-
in this, what we got here.
And the other thing is if you pick out specific things and you don't pick out the other
Others.
things,
Yeah,
it's-
okay.
that can be dangerous.
Another minor question, comment, line 206. Site plans, elevations, wall sections. What do we mean by wall sections are required? In the site section, or is that a wall elevation, building elevation?
I think it's an elevation.
Let's call it building elevations and site sections.
Well, I think it's a section. It's a, it's a, it's a view from, it's a slice, a horizontal slice.
It's not.
Through the building wall, but
It
what's
could
the
be a
purpose of
vertical,
that?
it could be a vertical.
Where is it?
Elevation.
Sorry, Laura.
Line 206.
An elevation is looking at it, is looking at it
understand,
from the
yeah.
front. A section is when
Isn't
you
it-
slice it.
Isn't it rather
Why
than a
would you have a
wall
wall
section,
section?
isn't it a cross
I
section?
think you mean a site
The
section.
walls are
Right.
when a section, the walls are the primary thing you see, because you're looking at the
Yeah, they show
definition.
people in it. and
That's the
everything.
elevation.
So you have site plans, building elevations, and site sections, I think is gonna get us what we're looking for in terms of information.
Well, the building section.
Of the building, just to understand the
Wall
height
I
or,
don't know, that came from the.
yeah, I don't know what, we wouldn't be,
I've never heard the term wall section. I know
I
what a
haven't
section of a building,
Garden
section of a building is.
We just
Wall
take
section
that
is
out.
literally
looking at the construction of the wall.
how that wall is built.
Yeah, we don't want
This
that.
side,
Sandwich
Yeah.
that it's made of.
It's no value.
We don't want that, has no value to this process, so, but site sections do, because we can understand the topography, so we need to clarify site sections.
So we should
Site
change that
plans.
to site
Site
plans,
plan.
building elevations and.
By site sections.
So where is the section?
You
of-
want
where is
building
the section of-
sections too.
I don't think sections is a
Sections for
relevant.
buildings don't tell you anything.
All sections.
It's a plan,
The
that's a,
plan.
that's a plan,
That's the site.
that's a site plan, yeah.
An elevation is height.
You don't want floor plans?
Floor plans.
Floor plans, yeah, floor plans should be there too.
That makes sense. Laura.
And a section is a slice through the building. So I guess the site plan is a section.
Mark, is it too much to ask for schematics at this point?
That elevation for the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, typically, like floor plate plans for each.
Floor
of
plans.
Can I answer that question? When we had to submit for this type of thing, site plan review, we did building elevations, all four sides of the building and a roof plan, how the building sits on the property itself. It gives you an indication of how the building will be sitting, how it's gonna be used, roadway access, all of that.
The only thing is that, given that we might want a floor plan,
Yeah, we
because
floor
you
plans,
need to
yeah.
determine how many units there are.
For ZBA, we get floor plans, we get elevations, and we get site
Is
plans.
this site plan review or is it are you now into?
But is it, a 3-unit building or a 4-unit or a 5?
It'll tell us what we're looking at,
Well, the
yeah.
building inspector would,
Yeah, well, simple floor plan,
So
but they're not detailed drawings.
No.
Right, so you
But
would
they-
add a
they're
floor
concepts.
plan.
Yeah,
You would add floor plan to the language. Okay.
We get detailed.
To your point here, you want site plans,
site plan,
site elevations.
building elevation,
Buildings,
and site sections.
The next sentence talks about section
They have
where
floor
there's a
plans
grade
and
change.
elevations, and but
Actually,
none
I
of
don't-
I
the.
don't think you need it when there's no grade change of more than 10%, say the next sentence.
Yeah, so I think it's just okay to just put site sections in there in the general roundup in that first sentence, and then it describes what you're using the site section for. It's 10% or more.
So, and floor plan. Yeah, sometimes when people do submit multi-unit buildings, you don't get necessarily detailed floor plans. Particularly for larger buildings, because they may change
You could
the,
call it schematic floor plan.
yeah, they might change it around and more 2 bedrooms, bigger 1 bedrooms instead, so.
Or we could call it a representative site plan.
Yeah, so sometimes they might give you something, but not exactly, but for what we're gonna be reviewing most of the time, they're gonna have, and I think it's perfectly
That's good.
acceptable to require,
Floor plan, right?
because you'll be reviewing smaller projects,
Yeah.
90% of it.
A good example of this, by the way, is the site signaling drawing set that we've all been reviewing. They do show building plans, building elevations, just schematically showing you how the building will be sitting on the site. And they do show a site section, which is the standard stuff.
But you need floor plans, so you know how many units there are, so you know how much parking is required.
Well, yeah. But generally, they're, yeah. But a lot of times it's not exact, particularly for larger buildings,
Right,
so.
Right.
Are we still on this or? So where are we?
So, are we at general development standards yet, or are we still on these?
Under 9.4.7. Two. It's referencing sections 12.6.3 through 12.6.12, which is appeal. Now, in our bylaws, the appeal references Mass GO 48, section 17, which is appeals only for special permits. What is the process for the appeal, for appealing an administrative site plan? So how would somebody, whether it's the builder, developer, or an abutter, how would that appeal? And I don't know if we should include 12.6.12 or
An
not, but
administrative decision goes to the ZBA.
No, yeah, but no, an appeal of a site plan review does not go to the ZBA.
Okay,
That goes to
Court.
through the court, yeah.
okay.
It doesn't go to the ZBA.
Mark, in.
so
my-
that goes to land court?
Superior Court, I believe, yeah.
Do you know what the process is? Because it wouldn't be the process for 48-17.
It would probably be the same process as if you're appealing a ZBA decision. That goes to the courts.
Can I ask about 9.4.8.1? It says development standards in the chart are applicable to all multifamily development within the chart. So if I own a three-family, which I have right to convert, doesn't this sentence say that I'm subject to this chart development standards?
If you have a.
I have a three-family in general district, and by right, I mean, I have a building, a house in the general district. By right, I can convert to three within the footprint of the building.
Under existing
The
zones.
sentence says that
Under existing.
all multifamily development within the chart is subject to these standards. I think you've missed the underlying.
Right,
Applicable.
right.
But if you're doing
Subject.
something to your house, you're not in the chart.
Right.
You're not doing it under the chart, you're doing it under existing zoning.
I understand your argument and it makes sense, but I think this is confusing.
You think it should be.
What line are you at, Richard?
Because I mean, my house is in the chart.
242.
If my house were in the
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah, if 242 development, if we said development standards in the CHOD are applicable to all CHOD multifamily,
Yes. I
insert the
think
word,
that's right.
insert CHOD. Or
I hate the chart after all.
that's what it goes.
In the chart.
Love that.
I really thought we were gonna be able to get chowder somehow. Or chowder.
I don't think we've resolved, whether or not the appeal, section
Mhm.
of the zoning is correct for site plan review, and maybe we can leave it for you to figure out whether that's applicable or not. What is?
What line is that?
Yeah, what line is the?
Well, that's 9.4.7.2. So Mark, you're gonna find that
Line
one out.
162.
162.
162, so that's the appeal for the special permit.
Each definition of one of these.
Mine's that section from the beginning to the end, which was appeal shall apply. Extra things. Yeah, so you would have to appeal it through the standard appeal process for site plan review. So this is saying everything from the beginning of site plan review. Number 3, because I think number 1 and number 2 are like the other purpose. So I just kind of skip to number 3, so it was from 3 to 12. So it appeals the same way as any other site plan, which is through the courts.
We never I have never heard of a site plan appeal, so I don't know.
Everything's appealable, but it does not go to the ZBA. It's not an administrative appeal like a decision of a building inspector. He interprets something some way, they don't like it, that gets appealed to the zoning board. But a decision of the planning board gets appealed to the courts.
But for when you did driveways, that came to us.
Well, that bylaw might
Under the
say,
zoning bylaw.
does it say?
I don't know. All I know is it came to us.
No, it doesn't say specifically, but it did go to you.
I'm talking about the one on our Bellum.
Yeah.
Yeah. That the planning board denied a driveway cut and it came to the ZBA. So I know. What?
No special permit, no, no site.
Yeah, it was a special permit.
For the driveway cut?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's why. Okay.
So in the review requirements, it references section 6.3 of our bylaws. In section 6.3.6 says that the standard described in section 6.4 shall apply to all applications for special permit or site plan review. And that's the earth removal. I thought you put in another section that earth removal wasn't going to need a special permit, so the question.
Where are you, Mary?
I don't have line numbers,
It's
but
line 166 and
Oh,
167.
we're from backwards.
no.
You're saying in the planning board's development standards,
Yeah, there's earth
there's a
removal.
special, that's within,
No, it's not a special permit. It's just criteria, their performance statements.
so those would be applicable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What's not applicable is the special permit for earth removal.
Right, but you said that's in a separate section, not in the development. Start from removal.
It is in the, there are standards for earth removal in the performance statements.
So
Yeah,
my
that's
question-
6.4 is
Yeah.
earth removal, but I'm referring to, I think, 6.3, which is.
So look
performance
at
standards.
6.3.6.
3.6.
Topographical changes.
Yeah.
And, oh, you're saying the standard described 6.4
The
should,
standards apply, but not the special permit. requirement.
Right,
yeah. the
the
standard-
language is tricky.
So even though it says the standards described in 6.4 shall apply. Okay.
Where are we?
Well, I
think
don't,
we're
I-
design
I'm
guidelines.
looking, but I have a comment on that,
No,
but I don't think we're there yet.
No,
You haven't done general
comment. What do you have a comment on? Sue?
Under the, that 2C, so starting line 214. Are we there or not there?
I don't know where we keep going back and forth.
Okay, so 214.
Let's go to
So-
14.
So
Site plan
performance,
approval.
performance standards. So my comment was, I thought we should list, we list 6.3.3, 6.3.6. I think we should add 6.3.9, which is aesthetic standards, because it's really amorphous. And I think that, I think we should exclude that. Because we're saying the following components of this section do not apply, and I think aesthetic standard 6.3.9 should not apply.
Well, because we've got our.
You're on line
design-
257.
Oh,
167.
No.
No, well, 253 is the start of performance standard.
Oh, wait, oh, yeah, well, that's an old one, I'm sorry, yeah,
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 the
yeah,
line changes,
yeah,
really,
sorry.
they have nothing to do with each other.
Two fifty-three.
Yeah, so two, it starts 253, I think we should add, in addition, 6.3.9. Yeah, it should be in this list of, this section does not apply. General standards, topographical,
Okay.
fiscal analysis, I think we should add aesthetic,
Where is the study?
6.3.9.
Because we have other aesthetic requirements in our design guidelines.
Yeah.
Yep, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's better to be clear.
Any objection to that?
No.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this.
Well, we have design guidelines, so it's, you don't.
We're adding, I don't even really understand where these are excluded. I'm just.
You're under the existing zoning.
And under special permits.
Special permit requirement.
So when it says the following components of this section do not apply,
You don't need fiscal analysis.
Because we can't do special permits under the zone.
I see,
For the, everything.
right, got it.
Okay,
So when we list out the 5.10 performance, industrial performance standards for the Beaver Dam, I do think that is very important. That's the drainage bylaw that is in the water protection district.
Your third clean review standards refer to your stormwater bylaw having to comply with that, so you're covered there, you don't. need
It's
to-
ground and surface water resource overlay protection districts.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, that's in here.
But where?
So.
What do you mean? 271.
I don't have
D,
my numbers.
2D.
In your zoning bylaw, under 6.3.10 landscaping law.
No, I'm saying it's important that we review drainage.
Right, and it's in here.
And it's here, it's in D.
It says other sections requiring a special permit.
Right.
Criteria for
This-
granting the special permit for each of the districts below are incorporated into the site plan review, and it includes section 10.3, ground and surface water resource overlay protection district.
So those
Yes, but
standards.
I don't know, I can't find it in the site plan review, is my,
It's
I
right
know
here.
it says it, but I can't find it in the site plan review.
it
No,
doesn't-
it's not, it's not
it's
saying.
not
it's in the
referring
plan,
to the
it's
site plan
saying
review.
that we have to apply the requirements of 10.3, even despite the fact that we can't require a special permit. We don't have to ask, so the site plan review must consider the requirements that would otherwise be
Must
a
meet.
special permit.
So the,
Compulsory.
Yeah.
right, so those criteria are picked
Have
up
to be met.
into the site plan review.
And that's a question I had, I didn't hear back to, that, the state is very clear that as of right, we can only look at vehicular access and on-street parking and things. It's very limited what we can deny. For,
Emily said we can include these.
no, I know, but my question has remained, if they're not giving proper drainage or they're not, following our earth removal and things like that, I don't see how we can deny it with what the state has given us.
So, Mary, I think the way to explain this is as granting a site plan review, as we did with Cornerstone Church, we put a bunch of conditions on our approval. And so if they refuse to agree to those conditions, they don't get the site plan review approval. So all these things will be conditions attached to the site plan review.
And I understand the concept of that. I mean, that was under Dover, which is getting closer to the, as of right.
You can think of this as Dover, that's what
Right.
Dover is.
Right. But that's a developer that wanted to work with us. I just don't see in anything that the state has said that we have much say if the developer says to us, we don't really want to do
So if
that.
the developer goes to get his building permit and refuses to comply with the site plan review conditions, he's not gonna get a building permit. So then he'll sue the town and the court will work it out, but he's not getting a permit
I just-
until it's-
I just would love to find where that is, because I haven't read anything for that, because all of the, I have them all here, all of the EOHLC letters back to the towns have said, you know, you need to review your site plan with your town council before submitting to us, because you have more stuff in there than we allow to be reviewed. So I'm just trying to say, I don't want ours kicked back for the exact same reasons. And I haven't seen anything to say that we're doing anything different than these other towns. do.
That might happen, yeah, that might happen. That's why we're doing
That's
the.
why we're doing it. So it happens now, not in December.
So has town council weighed in yet?
Not yet, because we don't have this,
Final stuff.
yes, this is
Well-
going to go to council. When this group's done with this, but at this point.
Okay, where are we now?
We have design guidelines.
Design guidelines?
Design guidelines.
My big takeaway, and I know that Mark, it looks like you took my suggestion, made others as well, but not all places, and that was, I thought it should change shall to should.
Right.
Which
It did.
it's not everywhere.
It's not everywhere, but there's a few that I specifically wanted to keep. Where it talks about it shall meet the
Okay.
character and the architectural, some of the.
You kept some.
All the ones that are specific pieces of buildings and elements for windows, roofs.
Yeah.
Those things I changed to should.
Okay.
because of-
So you thought about it and made it deliberate.
But you left the building entries as shall. 287.
287. Design elements such as. Because that's a relatively simple thing. I mean,
And why do we change shall to should generally?
because what if, because then.
To allow
we have
for
to-
Guidance, it's
they have
not
to-
guidance, it's not.
It's
okay.
guidance as opposed to, you know,
A
when they have to
requirement.
start listing
Okay.
specific waivers and it's
Okay.
53 feet, you know,
Okay.
without a
Got it.
change in the facade.
I have some comments on this section, and I'm trying to map my previous line up to this one, it's so hard. I'm gonna start at line 292, multiple buildings on a lot where parking, blah, 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 connected to minimize curb cuts onto public right of way. With the exception maybe of the LCD in the Beaver Dam District, we don't allow we just spend time knocking out multiple curb cuts. So these ought to be also subject to the same single curb cut. I think minimizing curb cuts allows too much.
The only thing I would say about that is in this, again, for good design, I was wondering, if I kind of thought that we should leave it that way because it's possible that the topography or whatever might mean that you could, you know, have one of your parking spaces to the right of the building and the other one behind the building or something, just to create, to limit it to the single one, which I know we're trying to do in general, but I was, site plan review, it's gonna give us some input and a little flexibility there to minimize impervious surface.
We can do the opposite and say
Yeah.
should instead of shall, and then require this one.
Well, would that bump it to a special permit for 2 curb cuts though?
No,
No, I mean, I don't think we can
That's in our
trigger
bylaw
a special
now, though.
permit in here. These are design guidelines.
We can,
That's in our current bylaw. If you go
Right.
above
General-
1,
Yeah, it goes to special permit right now.
Right.
And frankly, I don't see that as being a benefit generally to the side, if you're talking about these kind of village areas, having multiple curb cuts and the impact on the headed pedestrian environment and the safety of pedestrians. So I would just say they need to comply with the one curb cut rule we've got everywhere else.
So what would you have it say, Laura?
I would say when, where possible, parking and loading areas shall be connected to minimize paved surfaces. Not have it be about curb cuts.
So you would get rid of curb cuts.
I would get rid of it altogether, just be silent on it and let the underlying zoning say one curb cut. Line 302. The buildings adjacent to the public street shall have a pedestrian entry facing the public street. This again is about sort of site design flexibility. I'm thinking of Newport Park, where you might have a collection of buildings that are oriented towards the courtyard. Maybe they're double loading buildings and you're not.
Yeah, there's actually a phrase that was used, unless.
Well, we've actually
Unless
got
you-
it. We've got it on 336. So we're covered by 336. So why don't we just? Is there someone in conflict with this? So if we go to 336, it says the primary facade shall face the principal street or courtyard unless there's a reason for a
Yeah,
site-driven reason for a side entry. So maybe if you want it in there, change the shall to a should, because I think it's,
I would leave it, I would take it out, it's just
Take it out.
too
I agree.
confusing.
yeah, I think it's confusing. They're kind of in conflict. So strike section 4,
Line
Line
302 and 303.
302.
303, the buildings.
Yeah. Okay, and then, then my next comments are in materials, so I'll pause and wait for other people and then go on to materials because I have a bunch more comments in there.
I have a comment about, corner lots, let me see if I can find them. Going between different things. Okay, so it's line 308 on the new version. All facades visible from public right of way shall be treated with similar care and attention. I mean, shouldn't it be all facades? Because we gotta think about the neighbors, right? So why isn't it simply all facades?
And I think somewhere else we do talk
Similar
about
care.
all facades getting similar levels of care. I have to find that clause.
You're saying strike from a public way?
Right, visible, all facades visible, yeah, that's right.
That's intended to be for a corner lot.
It's a
though,
corner
Sam.
lot, yeah.
Right, but they're gonna be neighbors on the other sides of it. Right? I mean, so you want everything,
I
all
think that was
facades treated
intended to
with.
be to expose them two sides, then treat them both like
Yeah,
they're
the same.
fronts. That's
Well,
what that's intended to be.
It's under corner lots, not in.
Because
right,
often
no,
your
no,
back
I
is different.
understand that, but a corner lot has neighbors that are not,
Yeah, but often your back is different than your front.
but you want the same care. Anyway,
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying, but that's particularly for the two street facing elevations of the building.
But you can't have one that's,
So there is no real back, because you have
To
two
the corner,
sides.
yeah.
You have two fronts and two sides. So I think what you're saying is that the side is the neighbors. There's no back that
Right.
faces the woods. or
right,
faces
the sides face the neighbors, so why, it's a small point.
So,
Can I ask, I mean, these are all sort of niceties here, but what are we trying to get to as a group?
Something that goes to the planning board on,
To get the planning board to approve it?
yes.
to send it
And
to
are
the
And then it
select
goes to the
board.
state.
Are these questions, my question is, are we taking our time
Ah,
in the most economical way
probably
to?
not, but.
I realize you passed your meeting limit.
I just raised a question about that.
Yes.
So, I provided these comments in mine and they weren't picked up in the, in my comments that I forwarded to Mark. and they weren't picked up in the other sort of collective comments. So that's fine, but I do want to have a forum to discuss
I
these.
agree.
So if it's not tonight's meeting, that's fine, but I don't want to say, and and like, it's true, it's not the stuff that's gonna get the state, this is about design standards, but these are important for the expression of
This
these.
is going to
buildings.
UHLC. isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So-
So I think the point is that we very much want the EOHLC to see
Everything we're,
what we're going to be
As
putting in.
close to final.
We don't want to
Right.
cause a bad surprise for us.
Okay.
And you two are probably our design professionals, so I'm interested in hearing.
yeah,
So
so I have more comments.
So
Go
my
ahead.
opinion of these things is, it's very detailed and it's very specific. Anybody reading this that is planning to do anything in this town, in this district here, this is very specific. This is basically saying, follow this model. That mold is really cast right there. And if you follow this in terms of fenestration, material selection, entry points, porticos, material, fascias, soffits, everything is
Prescriptive.
ideal. I'm certain the state isn't gonna take issue with anything we put in here. There certainly may be some fine tuning necessary to be done here. But as far as for our discussion, for what we're intending to do, I found the design features to be quite enlightening, this sort of thing. I thought it was actually pretty good.
And they were based on, I believe, the work that three architects.
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't read the stuff that Gary
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Gary Tiffany, read very much like this in here. And it was good read. It doesn't say you must do this. You must have 4-inch exposure on your clapboard, wood, cedar clapboard side. It doesn't go into that level, but it does suggest follow the design motif that's already been established within the town at large and within the downtown too. So I think frankly, they're fine for what they are. They're not controversial from my perspective.
So I'm curious to know what additional thoughts Laura has.
Okay, yeah, I'm in agreement that generally they're good. I'm just making some adjustments and I don't think it's anything the state's gonna care about, but in the spirit of trying to get it all out there. So let me jump ahead to materials, which is line 385. And under materials, get my lines to match up here. Actually under section 9, which starts at 405. So under section 9, we're talking about architectural elements. We say the use of natural materials where feasible, is strongly encouraged. We talk about what types of materials those are. 405. 405. Yeah, sorry, I jumped down to some under materials. So I think that's all good. We're silent on it applying to landscaping, so I think we want to add the clause to architectural and landscaping. And we may want to prohibit vinyl or plastic fencing and gates and other fixed furnishings. And
I
Site elements.
hate to
yeah,
prohibit newer technology.
including plastic. You want to see plastic fencing?
Well, there's some nice composite fencing that looks like wood and it lasts longer. There's cheap stuff and there's good stuff is the problem.
Yeah, I think that this isn't going to discourage you. I mean, we handle this in the historic district easily. If you have a material that looks exactly like
Yeah.
the original natural material, it's generally good.
Right, which, yeah, so maybe if we stay away from what materials are prohibited and just apply it to architectural and landscape elements and encourage building in natural, is that all we should?
What do you think of this? Line 531, talking about addition materials, with fabric, brick, concrete, masonry, wood, cementitious, fiberboard, manufactured limestone, cast stone, and so on and so on and so on. Cementitious stucco may be prohibited. So they did venture away from the traditional materials and
Yeah.
did go with more contemporary materials.
Well, and
Yeah.
then maybe more affordable material.
And I think that's all okay.
I like your suggestion about landscape.
I would just extend it to landscape, so we try to communicate, like, we'll not necessarily want to see shiny white vinyl fencing.
Anybody
Yeah.
object to saying architectural and landscaping elements?
Okay, thank you, I'll keep
Do we
moving.
already have that in our site plan though?
You probably do, but
So this is CHOD specific. Which is more,
And Laura's into the landscaping, so let her have it.
We're mixing and matching though. Sometimes we say, go to our dinner, yeah, so. We're just not.
A line.
This is, so, I mean, to your point, though, this design,
Yes, it's what we do.
Sarah, these design standards are unique, they're very specific about what, so they're saying for this limited project,
Right.
you have to follow these guidelines, but for everybody else in town, you're.
Yeah, there are gonna be some counties, if they had to apply
that's
those to the places
maybe
they're
an
building, maybe it's gonna be.
It is.
Cross that bridge
Yeah,
when we come to
exactly,
it.
so
It's gonna be a major point of
it's kind of a double-edged sword here. It's
Right.
over
Yeah,
here,
it is.
they hurt us elsewhere.
We have to be very careful to make it clear that just because your house is located in the CHOD does not mean that these
You have
standards.
to upgrade it to these standards.
Yeah, you're just kind of.
Can I make one
Okay,
question?
yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking of the practical aspect. You got me thinking of this. So if I have a house and I have the house is big, I want to convert it to make it 2 or 3 units in that house here. Do I have to now, and it doesn't fit the mold of these design standards, do I have to change my design?
No.
Change the materials? Add a front?
If you're converting to a multifamily, which is 3 or more units, yeah, you'd have to apply.
You do.
Unless you kept the same footprint and you were in the general district.
That's right.
If you're in the general district.
You don't need to, you're already allowed to do it.
You don't,
keep the
and you
same
don't
footprint,
change the
you're already
footprint.
allowed.
Okay, if you're not though. If you're not, if you're on Pine Street and you're.
Well, I thought these
You're here
designs,
somewhere.
You're in the
the
CHOD.
guidelines, we can't say you have to.
It would be for
Right.
changes, I would think, not.
Yeah.
So maybe that should be under applicability. We should, development standards in the CHOD are applicable to all CHOD multifamily development. Except those with no exterior changes or something like. I don't know, let's
I
just
would
not, let's
not
not
just
worry
say
about that. And then,
Don't get burdened by
yeah, and
it.
if somebody comes in, and they're not changing the exterior of my home at all, then I think a reasonableness
Yeah,
provision.
Let's not.
I was more worried about
Yeah.
this issue.
Right.
Let's not lose sight, of these are guidelines.
Yeah, they
They're
are.
not mandates,
Right.
Right.
okay? So if somebody comes in and he, you know, he's in this district. But,
It's a contemporary home.
Yeah, my house
you know,
looks like a
yeah.
double wide, so,
Okay, can I keep going?
Yeah.
Get out of here. 479 under site lighting. You changed the site lighting should use shielded and full cutoff fixtures. I think we ought to take that back to shall. We could use the word dark sky compliant. because I
Yes.
think we use in site plan review elsewhere.
I agree.
Yes.
I'm on a campaign to get rid of all of the lights that shine on the harbor.
Yeah. So 479, change should to shall. And,
So I didn't change
Shall-
that one.
well, okay, so let's change it now.
Okay.
Site lighting shall use shield and full cutoff fixtures. I would go so far as to suggest we require dark sky compliant, but that is an additional level of kind of. filter.
I think in the performance standard.
Just put it in dark sky.
Okay. Dark sky compliant. Okay, so we're gonna add that to site lighting. Line 490. Integration with nature sustainability. There's no objection. I'm gonna say we add / resiliency to that title, because there are a couple of things that I'm gonna talk about in this section that are also dealing with that topic.
What is it called?
Line 490.
Yeah.
490.
Integration with nature / sustainability / resiliency.
Oh.
In
yes,
that,
it's-
Yeah, just adding a word. Okay, line. Then under planting and trees, I'm gonna get a little botanical on you all. Okay, so species native, let's not say New England, let's say Eastern North America. Things are getting hotter, and if you limit it to sugar maples in New England, we're gonna be. So let's say Eastern North America, line 491.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Let's see,
Do you even have to spell, can you just say native?
no. I would say no.
so there.
Yeah.
Just so that means-
Species native to species native northeastern North America.
Yep.
with the goal of contributing ecological benefits such as species diversity, adaptability, and habitat.
But
Do you
do
object?
we need, do we need to add that since we're ruling out invasives?
I think we do, because if
Okay.
we're talking about monocultures, like we're trying to actually create our canopy in town that is diverse and will withstand some of the impacts of pests and disease and.
Would you like to join the Friends of Manchester?
Talk to me when I get off the planning board.
What's the sentence, Laura?
The sentence is,
Yeah.
I emailed you. this,
Okay,
but-
yeah.
All right, let me just read it and
Yeah.
then for the record. So, Eastern North America with the goal of contributing ecological benefits such as species diversity, by which I mean tree species, adaptability and habitat. And then trees shall be located on the site to provide shade and passive cooling. To pedestrian and vehicular circulation.
What line is it?
This is just 494, I'm adding a sentence. Okay. Now I'm going to street trees, 495, actually 497, 40 feet. I'm gonna change that to 25 feet. 40 feet is way too far apart to get a continuous canopy and provide shade. And then, sections 4 and 5, stormwater bioretention areas, which may be used, I would change that language to are encouraged or are strongly encouraged.
Where are you again?
I'm on line 507,
507.
stormwater bioretention, and then I'm on line 510. And instead of saying may be used, I'm encouraging them to be used. And I would say bioretention, line 507, bioretention areas and landscape-based green infrastructure are strongly encouraged. ... Okay. Okay.
The only,
I emailed you. You've got all this.
oh,
You got all
I
this.
did?
Yeah,
You
I
ignored
sent you
her.
comments on the 30th,
um,
and they just didn't get picked up in here.
some of the smaller ones.
Right, I know they're small, but when it gets to design review, I want to see this stuff happen, and I want to
Yeah,
get
well,
more
I
tree
do have,
planted.
I do have one question,
Okay.
thing that going back up the street trees.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
now that we're talking about rows of street trees shall provide on both sides of all streets and driveways along areas of developments at
It's in the
intervals.
Beaver Dam district.
Beaver
So,
Dam.
is this only in Beaver Dam?
Yes.
This is what we're talking
Yes, it'd be with you.
Okay.
There's not a single tree in the Beaver Dam area.
Not yet.
All right.
There might be
then-
some plastic trees.
Plastic trees are prohibited. And then, line 511, just strike the word large. During large rain events, we want to capture small rain events, that's actually where the pollution happens.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's my last comment under the materials, and I have one more on the document.
about. They're all different suggestions.
I have one under buildings. Down on line 515. So this is my thing of the state saying the developer has to know exactly what they have to do. And when we say, the development shall include a variety of styles and typologies compatible with traditional New England architecture. I think that's a little amorphous.
I agree.
So
Well-
I don't know if we want to eliminate two or just take out compatible with traditional New England architecture.
Well, remember that this is not mandate.
I know,
And what you're trying to do is encourage, let the developer know that you're expecting a building that's gonna fit in with the town. And it isn't going to be a 3-story flat brick facade, flat roof.
But the rest of that solves the flat roof.
Not really.
How about if it said compatible with other
Existing?
existing buildings in the
But
town?
isn't this what we want?
No, we don't
No.
necessarily want
What
the
do we
traditional
want?
New England.
We
We want
want a
diversity.
variety.
You
So
do, huh?
just to be clear, this is when you have more than one building on a single lot. That's what that refers to. It's not referring to adjacent properties or developments, only for that lot. So if you have
So it's not.
three buildings on that
Oh,
lot,
it's in
You want-
that
you
little
want to have
cluster.
not the same building built three.
That,
You
Yeah.
want to have a little look. and
okay,
feel.
that's
But in
not
the
how I
Beaver Dam
read that.
district, why is that a bad thing?
That's not how I read
What?
that.
But in the Beaver Dam district,
Yeah.
if
So we're
they
talking
do,
about
let's say, a
development
large
fifty more than
20 unit
one
building
so
that
include
has
a variety of
details
styles.
and clapboards and the windows, or it's a nice looking building. Why wouldn't you want them to build 3 or 4 of them if that gets you to 100?
This one is really different from each other.
Oh, what's
why?
traditional? It's
Because
not
it-
a big deal. I
Well,
mean,
why? Why is that
Because that's
necessary?
more compatible with what the town looks like.
At the end of Beaver Dam Road, where only a hiker could cut.
No,
through
there
the
are
forest.
neighbors, we want them to live in Manchester.
Yeah. Yes, but I mean, if the building is a nice
We're not
building.
suggesting they do it, we're suggesting that this, they should consider it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whatever.
But I think the.
So do you change shall to should?
Yes,
It's-
yes.
The fact is, it's all.
Should be should.
No, but my problem is, what does that mean, traditional New England architecture? I just,
I think any.
I think people understand what that
I think
means
people-
from an
Okay.
architectural point of view. Yeah.
okay,
I think it doesn't look like Cuba.
okay,
It doesn't look like Mediterranean. I mean, there's some.
okay.
LA.
That will leave it there. It doesn't matter.
I can show you some things we don't want.
I like diversity
I
too,
have
but
one more picking comment on that particular thing, because if it says a development consisting of more than one building, so if somebody builds one building, it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
If they build just one building, but that's not.
Well, everything else we're doing is saying, is discouraging them
Yeah.
away from one building.
Yeah,
well, and it's calling for facade articulation and roof lines, and I think there's quite a bit, that's pretty prescriptive about architectural.
I'm just asking, why would we say consisting of more than one building?
I think it is about cluster,
Because we're
about the
hoping those
clustering of
people-
buildings.
Because that's the specific thing that we're trying to target. If they build more than one building, they should look at.
Right, we're trying to get them to build more than one building.
Yeah.
Right. But the standard only applies a development consisting. Of
So I had something in the waiver section.
Line 541.
I have no.
We came prepared with the thing, and you guys got the lines.
Um, It says may waive the requirements of this section 9.4.7, but we're in section 9.4.9. Are you bumping it up to the full site plan, or are you staying within the 9.4.9? And then the overlay acronym is you need to change that.
I bet it's a typo.
I think it's about 9.4.9.
Yeah.
$27.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
But that's.
Site
153.
Oh, it's
9.9.
9.4.9.
1.4.7 is the site review, site plan review.
We don't need the MC. And then in 545 should just be the chod, not the MC chod.
Let's start a new
What's the
acronym.
McCharlie?
What's the McChod?
Scottish.
It's the Scottish chod.
You get 3 burgers for $2. Drive-through, the drive-through. All right.
And the last one on affordability requirements, 9.4.10. Are we going to add a clause that says payments in lieu of affordable housing units are not permitted?
Yeah, that's what I want.
I want that in there too.
Yep, that's a great idea.
Payments in lieu of
Providing
providing
affordable.
them are not allowed.
I recommended we also got rid of the units off-site,
Where's that?
which we
I
currently
think
have
that matters. Look at what,
in the street.
no, I'm thinking of, Windover, the cluster housing out on Upper Summer.
Lyman Circle?
Yeah, instead, and for their affordable, they bought a house on Central Street, which makes much more sense for affordability.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the offsite. I have,
That was off-site.
So
but in this case, or what? Kind of what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve affordable housing.
Yeah, do we care where it is? Like,
Do we care where they are?
Well, we hear that they're distributed,
Right.
not
Right.
yeah, we don't want them.
ganged.
Well, we say later in the standards that it's integrated with the rest of the
Right.
development and shall be compatible in design, appearance, so,
That's assuming that it's all one thing.
right.
And this
So,
is
but-
just for 5 or up, right?
Right.
Yes,
We're not talking
right.
about the 2, the 3 and 4 units.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that, to me, that is a slight concern, so it's, so we're not gonna get any affordable units in the Pine Street sub-district, the Newport,
We're sure.
I mean, I'm sorry, not in the Pine Street or the C Street.
Right.
Yeah, we probably won't.
So that's equivalent of like,
Pine Street, probably.
You would.
There's some
Yeah.
large parcels. that
Yes.
would
No,
build
but we've
out
got a
five.
cap
limited
of
to
4.
5.
No,
Five.
5.
Oh,
There's a cap
5,
of
yeah.
5.
Five.
So on
So
Pine
there's
Street,
one
Like one
would-
with 5,
Yeah.
yeah.
One unit if it's 5.
So why not provide it on the site?
I think it should be provided on. site.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be a waiver, but that's why I've said we should discuss it.
It's hard to tell exactly where we go if we don't require it on site, whereas if we do require it on site, we pretty much know what
Yes.
we're gonna get.
Okay, so require.
So 20% of 5 is 1.
but didn't we
So
say
if-
somewhere we're rounding down?
Yeah, it says that, but 20% of 5 is 1 unit, so you have 1 affordable unit in the 5 unit. So on Pine Street, you had 1 affordable unit if you go to the 5 units. But you wouldn't on C Street because there's only 4 units.
I hope everybody knows how problematical
In our-
an affordable unit is. What it means from a management standpoint, a leasing standpoint, it is backbreaking
Right.
for the owner of the property.
Just like ours, not our problem.
It's not our problem, but it's just, we can't say, we're living in a dream world. We're saying, well, if it's a 5-unit thing, there's gonna be 1 affordable unit. I don't think so.
They'll build 4 units.
You bet. That's not a chance.
That's all.
Because,
We don't care.
because the backbreaking,
You do care
Because we're not gonna get any.
if you are trying to create some. affordable
yeah,
units.
if you really did care about it.
And-
Which we
and-
really do. We really do want to create some affordable housing.
But we're
To-
gonna get,
Percent is a pretty big number, which is what we're trying to get to, is close to 10.
Right.
and the likely building sites are the bigger sites,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
so we could make it to 10 and
20% is
then
great.
it's all Beaver
But
Dam.
I think, I wanna make, even take that up a higher level, which is state, Manchester-wide, county-wide, statewide, nationwide, this is a problem.
Yes.
So we're trying to do something about it, but we can't entirely solve it. And, the cost of construction is one of the underlying things. So you're saying that the cost of an affordable unit is saying the other,
The other
the
units.
project cost.
Saying
And that is a
administrative.
construction cost
Yeah,
problem, which again is regional and national.
Actually, I think
He's not
I'm
talking
saying the
about
operating
I'm not the construction.
The
cost.
operating.
the
I'm
administrative.
saying the operating cost of having an affordable unit is prohibitive.
Well, because your underlying construction costs.
No, no,
It's
it's
actually,
not construction.
It's a certification and building.
Yes.
I'll
When a
give, I'll
tenant
give, I'll give you,
leaves, the
I'll give
process
you
you
a
have to
perfect,
go through.
I'll give you an example. We manage a ton of affordable units. We have a division of people who are charged with one responsibility, compliance. When you have a market rate unit, you have a management company, you on maybe a couple of maintenance people. That's it. You have reporting requirements to all these agencies. And if you don't comply, the penalties are really severe. So you have a whole layer of administrative costs that you don't have with the market rate unit.
What about leasing? Tell them how complicated leasing.
Well,
So
Maybe that's beyond what we should, I would like to know about that, but let's try to.
what'll happen is they're gonna contract with
Well, I-
Harborland or something to do it for them.
I think what's gonna happen is that you won't have smaller properties with affordable units.
Right.
I think you see that already in town.
Which is fine.
Where you'll see the affordable units will be in the LCD.
But we will at least get 20%.
Or Elm Street.
in
Yes.
those.
Powder house.
Yeah. If you ever get those, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, are we,
And that's.
has anybody got anything else they'd like to?
Just one last question on that, so when it says the administration of it is the building inspector, the administration of what?
Of the compliance with the affordable housing.
So he's not doing the like submitting to the
Oh,
state.
no.
No,
So what is he doing?
he's making sure that one of those units is affordable for 20%.
Let's be a little clear about that.
Is that in our existing zoning?
No,
No, because we don't,
no.
Why would we make the building inspector
who else can
responsible?
do it? The town administrator, the town planner?
Isn't it the
Who's
state
currently
requirement?
doing it?
Right?
Nobody.
Nobody's
currently doing
nobody's doing it. Now we're having somebody do it.
Well, we'd have to have it in our.
Do we have to
regular
define that here in this zoning clause? Can we? put that
That's not.
Straight about.
in this. I,
That's a whole different issue.
yeah,
It is.
All right, let's, ask somebody.
you can make the Affordable Housing Trust responsible.
Like you don't have enough to do.
That's easy for you.
They don't have enforcement authority.
It's probably, I'm guessing it might be in the law.
Probably is.
Okay.
So I guess, I mean, to me, that's a big question that who is making sure that it gets on the SHI? Is that the town planner?
No,
How about nobody?
Well, but that's the problem, right? And so that's what happened with Powder.
no.
Absolutely.
But that's
So this,
No, that was a different.
Not a zoning problem, no.
And zoning.
The town is responsible for getting things on the SHI.
but who?
The town. The town.
The town.
That person.
Yeah.
But
So I
that
have-
problem,
It's the town planner.
it is a problem, but we're not gonna
It's not
solve
solve
it
it
with
with
this
the zoning.
particular document.
No.
Right,
No.
Not at 10 o'clock at night.
okay.
There's just a typo, if you want the typo.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't have the line numbers, but 9.4.10A, where you say developments with five or more, or more, just you do, or more twice.
You don't want to double more?
Okay.
Right,
Okay,
are we
I,
done?
I do have one more thing, and that is, I don't know if we have to deal with it now, but it's the quantum of vote issue. And so the way this is structured right now is as 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are under one warrant article, and that's not how we should be drafting it and presenting it. It should be 4 separate articles. Our change to definitions includes much more than multifamily housing or what is listed under section 5, which allows a majority vote. And the marijuana one, that certainly, is not eligible for for a majority vote. I think it's important on number 3 to spell that out with a little bit more detail. But that should be its own warrant article also. One reason is to notify all residents of the change. Because it's still in our bylaw that it says 2/3, and we're trying to change that. So we should spell out a little bit of the language of section 5. That's what I'm saying.
I agree.
Okay, I don't think we can.
Where would that go?
It doesn't go.
The last line in this document talks about the zoning enforcement officer. It should be, as set out in Article 12 in the revised, the inspector of the building.
Fair enough.
But the zoning officer doesn't exist.
Fair enough. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yes.
It's enforcement. Or whatever it's
The inspector of buildings.
Everybody wrap it up.
Okay. Any other comments?
I do have comments, but I'm reluctant to say.
Right.
Go ahead.
They're not substantive, so this is not going back into the content of what's written here. It's looking at what the order, if I was to read this the first time. I'm on line 153. I see site plan review. Okay, that's the heading, major heading. Site plan review, and then I go into. Let's see, what have I got? Applicability, procedure, submission requirements, design review committee, which is basically, that's the committee that does the architectural design. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of site plan review.
It's part of it, but it makes it look like it's happening early. And then the next thing we go into is design review process. So I'm no longer mentioning site plan at all. Is it not the site plan review process? Not design review process?
It is a site plan review process and the design review is part of it. So this committee is giving comments to the planning board.
No, I got that, Chris, but I go from site plan review to design review committee, design review process. And then I go to site plan approval and then project phasing. So
Heads are not.
I'm not
consistent.
seeing that link that takes me all the way down to the path. And all I'm saying is just literally rearranging. I'd move the design review committee after what I call site plan review process. So site plan review,
Yeah.
applicability, site plan review process, the design review committee, and then the site plan approval gets right into there, and then standard.
Okay, all right.
I hate to say it, but I just tried to see that logic as I was walking my way through it.
And I think legally it doesn't make any difference what order.
I'm just thinking somebody, if we're trying to sell this to the
Yeah,
town, it's
well,
reading this thing.
Well, the other
Is
thing,
it
that's
site plan
the
review?
kind of thing we can also do in the next. few months.
Subsequently.
If we can, yeah, so I'm not
So-
suggesting doing
And I
that.
think there's some of that probably
Yeah.
throughout.
You need
Yeah.
the common man sanity check. If you will.
That's a good comment. All right,
Okay,
anything else?
Move, we adjourn.
When's the next
Should we
meeting?
return or shall we?
So I think that, to the answer to that question is this planning board will discuss this and take a vote to move it to the select board on Monday. But I don't know that you need to come, you're more than
Yep.
welcome. And I'm not sure what it is on the agenda.
It's just after the Form A.
Yeah, okay. So 6:30-ish, we'll do that real quick. And then, Gail has her hand raised. Gail?
If you could approve the meeting minutes, that would help since I don't know when you're meeting next.
We already
We
did.
did.
We
We
did
approved them.
it.
They did.
Oh my gosh, I missed it. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. And, then the select board will vote on a week from Monday. And I think, a few people can go and represent. I think
17th.
Yes, but I don't know that we're gonna do a presentation there. I think we'll
No, probably
have,
not. And
And
so,
then-
and then, so if that happens, the
Right.
task force really doesn't have to meet for a while,
Till when?
Wow. See.
for a while.
Forever?
You're not up to us that easy. All right, a motion to adjourn planning board.
So moved.
All in favor?
And, oh, yeah, motion, from-
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
So I just have a question. How are we gonna be informed about the various community engagement things?